Chapter 43. In Julie's field of vision, she could clearly see Ding Meng's leap, lunge, and reverse slash. However, when he slashed back at her, his arm seemed to be slightly distorted. She knew that it wasn't a true distortion, but rather a visual error caused by his speed. Ding Meng's strength had improved by leaps and bounds during this period of time. Julie also knew that she wouldn't be able to dodge, so she used both of her palms to block. Another "pa" sound rang out. This time, it was her turn to take a few steps back. The force behind Ding Meng's palm had also caused her to feel the origin energy in her body stagnate. Moreover, her body wouldn't lie. Her right wrist already showed signs of a slight fracture. Was this really a beginner origin ability user? Julie's bewilderment had already turned into shock. "You're not a beginner origin ability user?" Ding Meng completely ignored her. Seeing that his attack hadn't hit, he stepped forward and switched to using his left hand as a chop to his right. This sort of attack was a bit monotonous as a child's fight. However, to Julie, this child's technique was extremely threatening. This time, she didn't dare take it head-on. She crossed her palms and used her arms to clamp down on Ding Meng's wrists and forcefully pulled them back. This borrowed force directly caused Ding Meng to fall backwards. Julie quickly turned around and raised both of her arms. Her entire body seemed to be enveloped by a layer of light blue energy. Then, she waved her palms in front of her, and an invisible stream of energy surged out. "Careful, something's strange," Little Rascal cried out in alarm. Ding Meng had already felt it when he landed. His entire body was enveloped by an incomparably cold energy. When he raised his head again, he saw that Julie had already flown into the air. As she flew, she used the same technique twice in a row, the standard Yangtze River's three-layered waves technique. The three streams of qi superimposed on each other and converged into a bubble of blue energy, trapping Ding Meng in an instant. Earlier, he had felt that the cold energy had slowed his movements, but now, he felt that his entire body was so cold that he couldn't move at all. It was as if he had been completely imprisoned. Not good. Ding Meng saw that Julie's palms had turned blue. It was obvious that she was going all out. At this moment, he had no choice but to take it head-on. Ding Meng forcefully activated the mirror of origin in his body. He straightened his chest and took the palm head-on. This was the smartest move out of all the clumsy method. Taking a hit to the chest was much less risky than taking a hit to the head. With a boom, Julie's palm of extinction landed squarely on Ding Meng's chest. Dust, broken arms, and broken limbs flew into the air as if they had been blown apart. Ding Meng finally bent over in pain, but Julie was sent flying back instead. With Ding Meng's chest as the center, a triangular white prism appeared and enveloped Ding Meng's body. The exquisite diamond mirror in the center flickered faintly for a moment before disappearing. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this was an extremely advanced defensive technique. Julie half-knelt on the ground. Her eyes were filled with shock. "What kind of technique is this?" Little Rascal was already proudly explaining. Our diamond star technique isn't some cheap trick. It's a divine technique that combines attack, defense, strengthening, purification, and many other uses. How could her cheap techniques compare to it? Ding Meng, the more you practice it in the future, the more. Ding Meng's attention wasn't on Little Rascal at all. In fact, he was also suffering from Julie's palm strike. Through his telekinetic vision, he could clearly see that the three origin points of his heart had dimmed and their rotation speed had slowed down. The two of them had only exchanged a few blows, but the enormous consumption of energy was far beyond what an ordinary person could imagine. Now that both of them were squatting on the ground and gasping for breath, whoever recovered first would undoubtedly have the upper hand. Ding Meng also stared at Julie. "You said that as long as I give you the memory chip, you'll agree to my conditions?" Julie's eyes lit up. "That's right. Tell me what you want. It's still not too late." Ding Meng gritted his teeth and said, "Give me an ion flyer. I'll give it to you immediately." Julie panted. You want it now? Ding Meng said, Yes, now. Okay, I'll contact you right away. Julie reached out her hand to press the wristwatch on her wrist. A light flashed and the communication interface immediately appeared. The moment she reached out her hand, she knew she was wrong. Ding Meng's cunning was completely beyond her expectations. Taking advantage of this fleeting moment, Ding Meng suddenly got up and rushed forward. His signature carp leaping over the dragon gate backhand chop was finally unleashed. Julie's hand had just pressed the wristwatch, so she could only raise her hand subconsciously to block. Gotcha! The chop was aimed at her right wrist again. This was a weak point that Ding Meng had never overlooked. Julie could clearly feel that her wrist bones were completely shattered. The intense pain from her wrist instantly numbed her entire arm. It was only now that she realized that she had made a mistake that most people would make, which was to underestimate the enemy too much. Sometimes, the simpler the mistake, the more fatal the consequences. Under the intense pain, Julie gritted her teeth and fought back. She used all the strength in her body to kick towards the sky. This kick also caught Ding Meng off guard. Ding Meng had sensed her movement and forcefully flipped his body to the right in midair. The high heels originally wouldn't have hit him, but with a clang, a sharp blade shot out from the tip of the shoe and stabbed into Ding Meng's lower abdomen. This was the reason why she had been wearing high heels all this time. It wasn't for the sake of dressing up or looking good, but because the shoes hid her last resort. Whether or not she could save his life depended on this attack. After Ding Meng rolled on the ground a few times, he felt as if a poisonous snake had drilled into his stomach. His internal organs were in pain from the bite, but fortunately, the origin energy in his body was circulating normally, so the wound wasn't a problem. However, this wasn't the case in Julie's eyes. Her short spike was coated with a special poison that would quickly paralyze the victim and make them lose their ability to fight. Even the blood of a beginner Origin Energy warrior wouldn't be able to cure it. When an Origin Energy user cultivated, their blood would be modified. Ordinary poisons and diseases wouldn't be able to penetrate their blood. From this perspective, Origin Energy users had a much longer lifespan than ordinary people. However, not only had Ding Meng not fallen, he had even stood up. Little rascal hadn't spouted nonsense. The strength of the Diamond Star technique was far beyond what others could imagine. Even Ding Meng himself didn't know about it. However, Ding Meng knew one thing. The woman in front of him was too dangerous. If she didn't die, he would die. Ding Meng endured the pain and pounced again. Julie pushed off the ground with one hand and also flew up. Her legs swept out like a bamboo pole. Even an arrow at the end of its flight was still a strong arrow. The remaining power of a high-level Origin Energy user couldn't be underestimated. Unfortunately, her trump card had already been exposed. Ding Meng couldn't fall for her trick again. When the short spike on her high heels swept over, Ding Meng's hand blade arrived first, cutting into her ankle like lightning. This attack was out of Julie's expectations, because she didn't even feel any pain. When she fell, she found that Ding Meng had used the momentum to spin horizontally a few times in the air, accompanied by a dark golden light that was spinning along with her. It wasn't until Ding Meng fell that she saw clearly what that light was. At this moment, Julie's pupils contracted. Chapter 44. In less than a month's time, many fights had taken place in the dark experiment hall. Regardless of whether it was thrilling or tragic, none of them were as bizarre as this one. Ding Meng's back had smashed into Julie's lower abdomen. His left hand had grabbed her ankle, which was the short thorn that Julie had kicked back at him. His right hand was still in the opposite direction, but this time, it was the dark gold claw blade that cut open Julie's throat. Blood spurted out like a fog. Ding Meng let go of her left hand and rolled to the side. The claw blade drew a strange arc in the air and landed on Julie's right chest. The tip of the claw accurately nailed into the position of her heart. Julie's whole body convulsed, and blood flowed out of her mouth. This situation was exactly the same as when Xiaoxi died, but Xiaoxi died very quietly, without any regrets. He knew that Ding Meng would definitely fulfill his last wish, so when he closed his eyes, there was always a smile on his face. Julie was completely different. She lay on the ground with her eyes wide open, her face full of suspicion and fear. She couldn't understand how a high-level origin ability user like herself could be defeated by Ding Meng, who was just a beginner origin ability user. She died very unwillingly, and she died with her eyes wide open. The world was still dark. Ding Meng sat on the ground calmly again. This time, there were no pursuers and there was no clamor. His hand suddenly trembled, and the claw blade flipped over to his palm. He used his origin ability, and the heat immediately dried the blood on the blade. This was still the blood of the enemy. This blade needed to be sacrificed with the blood of the enemy. It needed to be washed with the blood of people like Julie, who thought that they were from a higher race. Only then would this blade have its value and meaning. What good fortune is there in gathering, what sorrow is there in parting, what joy is there in life, what bitterness is there in death? In the face of death, the higher races and the lower races were the same, so only death was truly fair. Ding Meng gasped for breath, and took out the bracelet that Xiaoxi had entrusted to him before he died. After many years of playing with the bracelet, it had lost its original luster and turned yellow and black. But this time, there was no longer the blood of laborers or inferior people on it. Ding Meng lowered her head and stroked the bracelet as she muttered to herself, "Little Four, rest in peace. I've finally avenged you." Little Rascal's voice also seemed to be choked with emotion. "Ding Meng, you're good. You're worthy of Little Four's sacrifice. We didn't let him down." Ding Meng nodded. "Little Rascal, let's go. Let's get out of here." At the entrance of the tunnel, Vader, who was lying on the ground, immediately stretched out his trembling right hand when he saw Ding Meng coming over. The gun in his hand was the healing gun. Little Rascal said, "Should we take care of him too?" Ding Meng said, "No. Whether or not we can really escape depends on him." After saying that, he took the initiative to take the healing gun. "Officer Vader, I've said it before. I just want to live." Vader's voice was very weak. "Ding Meng, if you take me out of here, you will be greatly rewarded." Ding Meng looked at him. "This time, I believe in you." The square on the ground of black gold base was the same as usual. There were no changes at all. The dense crowd was divided into 5 groups. Every worker was tightly hugging the bundle in front of their chest. Every single one of them was dressed in rags and was anxiously waiting. Suddenly, a cheetah transport vehicle drove into the square at high speed. It rushed into the crowd without any reason and stopped at the entrance of the exchange center. This was a mercenary group's vehicle. Many workers were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. They could only spontaneously move aside. The people who jumped out of the vehicle were indeed mercenaries. One of them was the person in charge of the exchange center, Officer Vader. The other was also wearing a mercenary uniform and holding a long photoelectric gun. However, the mercenary behind him was a little short and wore a pair of black goggles, so no one could see his true face. The elevator inside the exchange center led directly to the command center on the top floor. Vader went straight to the central console as soon as he walked in. The marshal had been waiting impatiently for a long time. "What's wrong with the communication system? I can't see the live feed for 7 hours." Vader said without batting an eyelid, "The workers below are causing trouble. That Ding Meng destroyed the scanner, so I can't see the transmission feed." The marshal couldn't help but ask, "What about Miss Julie? Why didn't she come back with you?" Vader said, "Miss Julie personally captured Ding Meng alive. She's on her way back, but she's injured. She asked me to come back first to inform you." This lie wasn't taught to him by Ding Meng. He was the one who came up with it. He was taking a risk and gambling that the marshal would definitely be alerted. In this entire base, other than the memory chip, only Miss Julie's safety could alert the marshal. Sure enough, The marshal immediately stood up from the sofa and waved his hand. Come, let's go down and pick her up. Bring along the portable medical device. Seeing the marshal leave in a hurry, almost half of the people in the command center left. Little Rascal couldn't help but sigh. Ding Meng, you're still the smarter one. You knew to let Vader live. Ding Meng said, that Julie's news can't be hidden for long. Once it's leaked, he'll have to run too. We'll definitely find a way to escape if we follow him. In the central building of the base, Vader led Ding Meng to the rooftop of the command center with ease. The blue, Mystic Bird transport ship was quietly parked there. The two of them opened the hatch and entered without saying a word. Moments later, the transport ship slowly rose into the air, a large blue crystal flame spurting out from its tail. It really did look like a mystic bird, as it soared through the clouds and through the horizon. Ding Meng sat in the co-pilot seat and looked down through the window. The entire black gold base gradually shrank and finally disappeared. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He believed that he would never return to this place again. The transport ship quickly passed through the barrier. At this moment, the sunlight outside was already rather weak, even weaker than the light inside the barrier. Little Rascal said, the solar eclipse will arrive in 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 46 seconds. Ding Meng finally saw what the so-called planetary warning on the warship meant. He saw countless tentacle monsters breaking out from the ground. They were so densely packed that it was impossible to count them all. They completely submerged the sand on the ground. In addition to the tentacle monsters he had seen before, there were also countless other monsters that he had never seen before. Some of them were so huge that they weren't inferior to their transport ship. Wisps of light smoke suddenly drifted out from the jagged rocks that looked like lighthouses on the high slope. These wisps of smoke seemed to be under some kind of magic. They sometimes twisted into ropes, sometimes into clouds, and finally tore apart like pieces of paper and exploded in midair. When they flew closer and took a closer look, they found that these weren't real smoke, but countless birds and monsters. They covered the entire atmosphere like they were blotting out the sun. The degree of ugliness was simply indescribable. It turned out that when the solar eclipse happened on this planet, these monsters would come out. Ding Meng finally understood how the sea of skeletons of those creatures on the ground came to be. Perhaps they were all eaten up by these monsters. Little Rascal said, Ding Meng, I detected a lot of mutated fluctuations of the K virus. These monsters should be infected. Ding Meng nodded silently, but he sighed in his heart. The transport ship was now flying very high. He could also see the dome very clearly. It was indeed a huge piece of liquid metal, like a circle of white water suspended in midair. Now, with the arrival of the solar eclipse, the dome that was as bright as the sun's star was also dimming. It was obvious that it could no longer absorb such strong sunlight. In a few more hours, once the dome was extinguished, the entire planet would be plunged into darkness. Black gold base would be flooded by the surging army of monsters. Whether it was mercenaries or laborers, none of the tens of thousands of people in the base would survive. They would be like the original creatures outside the barrier 20 years ago, all turned into skeletons, forming a sea of bones that stretched as far as the eye could see. They might not even have a single bone left. Ding Meng wasn't a person who was overflowing with sympathy, but when he thought about how there were so many people down there, he didn't feel good about it. Most of these laborers were low-class people who had suffered enough oppression and humiliation in their lives. Who would have thought that in the end, they would be buried in the mouths of these monsters? It was really a pity. Perhaps death was actually a good thing for them, because they would be truly free from this. Although Ding Meng knew the whole story, Vader had never seen such a terrifying scene from hell. He sat in the pilot's seat and shouted, "What's going on? What's going on? What's going on with these things? Where did they come from? How come I've never seen them before?" Ding Meng glanced at him and said indifferently, "Sir, you should concentrate on driving. I'm afraid we can't escape with this ship. We'll only have a way out if we change to another ship from the transport ship. Chapter 45. Trembling. Other than trembling, there was only trembling. This kind of earth-shattering tremor could even cause one's soul to tremble. The corpse in the darkness was also trembling. Suddenly, the corpse's fingers trembled slightly. As the tremors in the main mine grew stronger, the corpse's left hand finally moved. Julie let out a soft groan. She had finally woken up. Resurrecting an origin ability user wasn't difficult. Under normal circumstances, as long as the heart and brain weren't completely dead, the advanced medical cabin could generally save them. Julie obviously wasn't saved by the medical cabin. Her fatal wounds were in her neck and heart, but in reality, these two places weren't really fatal to her. After her throat was cut open, although a large amount of blood had spurted out, the Dark Abyss Ice Dust Art had been activated in time to stabilize the circulation of energy and blood in her body, ensuring that the remaining life force wouldn't leak out. As for the heart, it was a fluke. If Julie had been in Marshall's place, Ding Meng's stab would have definitely taken her life. Because she was a woman who had maintained her figure quite well, her towering chest acted as a cushion and greatly weakened the strength of the stab, so it didn't completely damage her heart. This wasn't Ding Meng showing mercy or underestimating his opponent. If there was anything to blame, it was Ding Meng's fault for not seeing many women. In fact, Julie was the first woman he had ever wanted to kill. After all, certain parts of a woman's body were different from those of a man's. Ding Meng didn't know much about the structure of a woman's body. In fact, he didn't know much about women at all. Besides, Julie's Dark Abyss Ice Dust Art didn't start from the heart. Otherwise, if the origin was destroyed, even the gods wouldn't be able to save her. At this moment, the experiment hall was shaking. Julie also felt that something was wrong. Such a large tremor definitely wasn't caused by an explosion. Based on her past experience, something must have happened on the ground. Thinking of this, she forced herself to turn on the wristwatch with her weak body and crippled right wrist. Her left hand trembled as she pressed on the screen. Ding Meng's file was quickly pulled up. She did not know where Ding Meng had run to, but there was one thing she was certain of. With Ding Meng's current strength, it was impossible for the general's men to stop him. As long as Ding Meng used some devious ideas, it would not be a problem for him to escape from Black Gold Base. Since he wanted to escape, the interstellar transport ship, Black Gold No. 3, hovering in the sky was a checkpoint that Ding Meng would not be able to bypass no matter what. Julie reluctantly pressed Command Center No. 3 on the transmission bar of the hologram and decisively sent Ding Meng's message over. There was only one word in the message: memory. That was all she could do in her current condition. This was the limit of her ability. As for whether or not she could complete the mission, it was all up to fate. Black Gold No. 3 interstellar transport ship. The central command hall was brightly lit. Hundreds of virtual screens were all lit up. On them were specific images of various parts of the starship. Dozens of holographic projectors were constantly generating all kinds of simulated objects and virtual map. This was the detection system using multiple functions to automatically detect the situation inside and outside the starship to prevent any unexpected factors from occurring. At this moment, the solar eclipse had completely arrived. The planet below had completely sunk into darkness. Baines stared at the central screen and observed carefully. He could ignore the general and the others in the base, but Julie had not sent back any news. Officer Baines, Miss Julie has sent an urgent message. A blonde woman beside him turned around and said. She was his right-hand woman. Baines waved his hand and said, "Connect it." A virtual image was quickly created on the workbench. Ding Meng's virtual image and data were all displayed. When he saw the word memory, Baines' expression changed. The blonde woman was already explaining. According to the information sent back by Miss Julie, this Ding Meng should have left the base on the ground. Baines pondered and said, "The base on the ground is not allowed to have ion flyers. If this Ding Meng wants to escape, he won't be able to go around our number 3 transport ship. The blonde woman immediately operated on the screen. According to the characteristics of the body scan, there isn't a single person on the ship that is similar to him. Baines frowned. He's not on the ship? The blonde woman said, theoretically, yes. Baines' gaze swept across the virtual screens and finally stopped at the connecting cabin outside the starship. It's not that he's not on the ship, it's that he didn't even get on the ship. The blonde woman was obviously very smart. She immediately understood what he meant. She continued operating on the screen and pulled up the database. In the 1 hour's time of departure, there are only 3 large ships that have left the port. They all belong to Shinda Aerospace's number 101 fleet. They're Type 6 Swordfish transport ships. Their serial numbers are 703A, 703B, and 703C. Contact the captains of the 3 ships. I want them to appear in front of me immediately, Baines ordered. The order was quickly issued. In just 10 seconds, 3 remote holographic images appeared on the workbench. The first and second holographic images were of an old man with a wrinkled face and a handsome young man. The 2 of them asked almost in unison, "What's the matter? Captain Baines, why are you in such a hurry? What's the matter?" Baines' expression had already darkened. "Nothing. I just want to see if you're there." The 2 captains of Ship A and Ship B were indeed there. The problem was that the third holographic image did not produce a mirror image at all. It was full of static signal interference. It was obvious that Ship C's ion communication system had most likely been cut off. "Where's Captain Li Jie of Ship C?" Baines asked with a sullen expression. The 2 captains were stunned for a moment before they lowered their heads to ask. After about a minute, the young captain of Ship B raised his head with a serious expression. "Captain Baines, Ship 703C suddenly lost contact with us 20 minutes ago. According to our observations, Ship C changed its course without permission. It's currently heading in the direction of Nebula TCP-121 at a speed of 63,000 miles per hour. Its course is line 112A2CD. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge 3-dimensional map of the galaxy quickly appeared on the central application. The countless lines, bright spots, and markings were very clear. The blonde woman pointed at Nebula TCP-121 marked on the map. "Captain Baines, that's the direction of the Norse Empire. If Ding Meng is on Ship 703C, then his current speed has already exceeded the 3rd cosmic speed. With the various configurations of the Type 6 Swordfish transport ship, he can enter the observation range of the Norse Empire within a week. It'll be very difficult for Black Gold 3 to accurately locate and catch up to him." Baines was silent. Clearly, he was thinking of a solution. The memory chip was very important. The higher-ups were determined to get it and would not allow all their previous efforts to go to waste. "If we can catch up to him as fast as we can, how long will it take?" Baines asked. The blonde woman said, "Only Black Hawk 5A can catch up to him in 3 hours and 21 minutes if we act immediately." Baines fell silent again. The Black Hawk 5A was a Falcon attack spacecraft equipped with a weapon system. It could easily blast a civilian transport ship into pieces. If the memory chip were to be shattered as well, then everyone would be in deep trouble. "Captain, time is of the essence. Please give the order quickly," the blonde woman reminded him. 10 seconds later, Baines finally said coldly, "Move out." Chapter 46. In the vast universe and the deep starry sky, a swordfish spaceship that resembled a giant shark was traveling at high speed in the colorful and brilliant Milky Way. This was Transport Spaceship 703C of Starship 101 of the Singda Aerospace Company. It was originally carrying a new batch of workers to the Black Gold Starship No. 3, but it was intercepted by Ding Meng and Vader at the connecting cabin of the spaceport. Vader first shut down the ship's communication system, and Ding Meng, who had followed behind, used his identity as a mercenary to close the exit, trapping more than 50 crew members in the connecting cabin. When the other two transport spaceships had completed the handover, 703C quietly followed them out of the port and successfully escaped from the transport spaceship. As for the captain, the first mate, and the second mate, they were mercilessly shot to death by Vader when they boarded the ship. Ding Meng did not care about this at all. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Sometimes the logic of survival was just that simple. If you don't die, then we'll die. There was no room for choice at all. On the other hand, Ding Meng did not kill the crew members who were trapped in the connecting cabin because these ordinary workers posed no threat to him at all. At this moment, the autopilot system had been activated. What Vader and Ding Meng had to do was to replenish their energy and physical strength in the spaceship's resting area. Looking at the stars flying past outside the cabin, Vader appeared to be deeply worried. His wife was still in the Federation, but he was heading in the direction of the Empire. He did not know when they would meet again. Perhaps it would be tomorrow, or perhaps there would never be a tomorrow. Ding Meng had already taken off his mercenary's soft armor and changed into Singda's crew uniform. After enjoying 12 plates of sirloin steak, 21 salads, and 30 plates of seasonal vegetables, he finally put down his knife and fork in satisfaction. He also conveniently wiped out the 7 bottles of iced black tea on the table. In this era of advanced technology, delicacies were one of the most extravagant human indulgences. Think about it, the workers in the Black Gold Starship base used the cheapest industrial nutrient solution. Even ordinary human families usually used slightly better highly polymerized compressed solutions. Once the lid of the test tube was lifted, they would raise their heads and take a mouthful. The entire process would take less than 10 seconds, and one's meal would be over. There was no joy in eating at all. Therefore, all kinds of delicacies were usually reserved for the rich. Ding Meng would never have thought that Singda Company's transport ship would have such good stuff hidden in it. After struggling on the edge of life and death for so many years, even if he could eat this meal, it was unknown whether there would be a next one. Not to mention that Origin ability users consumed a lot of energy, and beginner Origin ability users needed a lot of food to replenish their energy. Thus, there was no reason not to enjoy it. After enjoying the Western food, Ding Meng's attention was attracted by the control system of the spaceship. The central screen showed that out of the 1780 workers on the spaceship, only one of them was in use. In other words, there was only one worker in this batch. What kind of situation was this? Ding Meng was extremely curious. When he was first sent here, he was also in a hibernation pod. That was why he knew nothing about the outside world when he arrived at Black Gold Base. However, there was one thing that he could understand. The laborers were all inferior people, and the cabin provisions they usually received were pitifully little. Even the transportation companies would do anything to make use of them. Many people starved to death as soon as they stepped out of the cabin. It was too common. Since there's only one person, let's let him out and have a look. Ding Meng had no prejudice against laborers. They were all human beings, so why should they be treated differently? He was also born as a laborer. Vader had no objections to this at all. Even if he had objections, he would have none. Ding Meng was a ruthless character who could even kill Julie. If he wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as stretching out his hand. Soon, the door to the rest area opened automatically. A sloppy man in ragged clothes stumbled in. Looking at his posture, he was about to fall to the ground at any time. He was probably so hungry that he couldn't take it anymore. Ding Meng was too lazy to say anything. He pointed at the table not far away. There were still a few portions of steak on it that he hadn't finished. The man's eyes immediately lit up like a wild wolf that had seen fresh prey after being starved for many days. However, when he sat down at the table, it was as if he had become a different person. He became unusually calm. First, he straightened his back. Then, he carefully wrapped the napkin around his neck like a real gentleman. He picked up the bowl of borscht elegantly and took a small sip. Then, he held a knife in his right hand and a fork in his left hand. He cut off a small piece of beef and put it into his mouth to slowly chew it. If one were to compare Ding Meng's table manners with his, then Ding Meng would be like a hungry dog pouncing on feces. He would rush up and tear, bite, gnaw, and chew, like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds and sweeping away 1,000 soldiers. However, this person was like a true aristocrat. His every movement was solemn, elegant, and romantic. Even if he was a laborer, even if he was starving, the etiquette of Western food was so exquisite that even Vader was staring at him with his eyes wide open. It wasn't until the man slowly finished the plate of steak and regained some strength that he put down his cutlery and muttered, "What a pity, what a pity." "What's a pity?" Ding Meng couldn't help but ask. The man sighed and said, "The environment here is barely passable. It's a pity that the steak is refrigerated and half done. Also, it's a pity that there's no red wine to accompany it. Most importantly, there's no fruit after the meal. This is not how Western food is eaten." Hearing his words, Ding Meng was so angry that he laughed. "You're already like AB** starred, and you still care about these things? Do you really think you're one of those rich and powerful people in the Federal Empire? What else do you want?" Ding Meng stared at him. The man didn't pay attention to him at all. He found a nearby sofa and sat down to rest. It looked like he was about to doze off. Ding Meng couldn't help but say, "I'm not a crew member." The man didn't even open his eyes. He just snorted softly as a response. Ding Meng continued, "I'm not from the refugee camp or the mercenary group either." This time, the man didn't even say It looked like he was about to fall asleep. Ding Meng said, "I'm also a laborer. I'm the one who let you out." The man finally opened his eyes and said calmly, "Then I'll thank you." He was saying thank you, but his tone, expression, and eyes didn't have the slightest bit of gratitude. It was as if Ding Meng was his servant and that it was his duty to do these things. However, Ding Meng wasn't angry at his arrogance. Instead, he found it very interesting. Look at him, sitting on that sofa. He's just like the president of the Federation sitting on a spacious and comfortable sofa. He's so arrogant, it's as if he's forgotten that he's a laborer. Vader was also impressed. Even when he was giving orders at the exchange center, he wasn't as arrogant as this guy. However, now that they were on the run, Ding Meng couldn't be bothered to argue with this guy. After scanning the area with his telekinetic vision, he found that the man's threat level was basically 0. He also planned to sit down and take a nap. In fact, just as he sat down, the scruffy-looking man suddenly opened his eyes. "Right, where are the crew members of this ship?" He finally asked a question that a normal person would ask. Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. "They're gone." "Gone?" The scruffy-looking man seemed very curious. "Why are they gone?" "If they're gone, they're gone. Unless you want to see them?" Ding Meng's answer was very direct. His words were as good as not saying anything. Unexpectedly, the scruffy-looking man nodded seriously. "Yes, they're gone. Why do you have so many ridiculous whys?" Ding Meng was speechless again. This guy made him completely speechless. The scruffy-looking man asked again, "Excuse me, can I use the crew room?" Ding Meng immediately became alert. "What do you want?" The scruffy-looking man answered seriously, "I want to take a hot bath. My current appearance isn't very good." Ding Meng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought to himself, "It's not that your appearance isn't good, it's that you don't have an image at all. From another perspective, why would a coolie like you need an image? What's an image? Can it be eaten?" Although he was grumbling in his heart, Ding Meng was still very magnanimous. He waved his hand and said, "Go on. I won't take you there. Find your own way." "No problem." The scruffy-looking man slowly stood up and walked towards the exit in a leisurely manner. However, before he could walk out of the lounge, he slowly walked back. Vader was very puzzled. Why did you come back again? The scruffy-looking man still had a serious expression on his face. I thought about it and decided that it's better not to take a bath. Why? Ding Meng was also quite puzzled. The scruffy-looking man said, taking a bath is too damaging to one's vitality. It's not good for the body. This time, Ding Meng wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. As an origin ability user, I didn't even say that it was damaging to my vitality. You, an ordinary person, are talking to me about vitality? Unexpectedly, the scruffy-looking man stood up again not long after he sat down. Forget it. I still think that I need to take a bath. Ding Meng and Vader were both stunned. Why this time? The scruffy-looking man smiled embarrassedly. Compared to vitality, I still think that my personal image is more important. Ding Meng, Vader. Chapter 47. The sloppy man was quite fast. In less than 10 minutes, he had returned from the crew cabin. Not only had he taken a shower, but he had also shaved his entire face. He had even meticulously groomed himself. It was unknown where he had found a white shirt and a pair of black pants to wear. His entire person looked very spirited, especially his slightly parted hair, which suited his oval face very well. However, what Ding Meng admired the most was that this guy had even found a pair of leather shoes to wear. Under the illumination of the surrounding lights, the black leather shoes shone brightly. They were probably not ordinary goods. When the sloppy man returned to the lounge, it was as if he had returned to his own home. He looked around and revealed a satisfied smile on his face. Not bad. Only then did Ding Meng carefully size him up. The sloppy man wasn't actually a sloppy person. On the contrary, his facial features were very regular, and his face was very angular. Judging from his appearance, he belonged to the type that was truly handsome. The man didn't look very old, about 24 or 25 years old. In the era of origin ability, this age was considered young in the true sense of the word. The collar of his white shirt was slightly open, and the cuffs were rolled up to the middle of his arms, revealing his fair skin. Just by looking at his skin that was as smooth and white as a woman's, Ding Meng felt that this guy shouldn't be a laborer. No matter how he looked at it, this guy didn't look like an inferior deformed person, nor did he look like someone who was born with a disability. Moreover, the man's figure was quite good. He was also tall, and he always had a smile on his face. If he could be categorized, then he could be described as sunny and handsome. If he could rely on this appearance and sense origin ability, he could at least become a second or third tier male celebrity if he went to the big cities of the Federal Empire. Of course, this was Vader's opinion. Ding Meng didn't see it that way. What really attracted Ding Meng about this man was his pair of eyes. They were a pair of deep eyes. At first glance, they seemed to be full of smiles, but at first glance, they seemed to be somewhat melancholic. But at second glance, you could feel a sense of vicissitudes within them. Of course, the most important thing was his temperament. A person's temperament could not be faked. When they were eating the steak earlier, the man gave off a funny vibe, as if he was putting on an act. But now that he had changed his clothes, Ding Meng felt that this man was really like a member of the upper class. Julie and the others did not consider themselves to be inferior, but that was based on the extreme exploitation of labor. However, this person was born with a sense of superiority that was a mixture of sunshine, elegance, and unruly, which left a deep impression on others. The scruffy-looking man apparently noticed that Ding Meng was looking at him. He smiled and walked over to greet him. "What do you think?" Ding Meng nodded. "I think your shoes are good. You really have good taste." The sloppy man gave him a thumbs up. "I just polished my shoes. Zebra brand. Not bad." Ding Meng could only continue to nod with drooping eyelids. "Yeah, not bad." The scruffy-looking man had already sat down on the sofa and was mumbling, "My head can be broken, but my hair cannot be messed up. Blood can flow, but my shoes must be polished. Even if I'm going to fight, I must maintain my style and not blow up. little rascal couldn't help but pop up. TSK, this guy is a talent. You don't say, this guy is actually a little handsome. Ding Meng, you should learn from him and dress up properly. If you look like this now, I'm afraid that you'll still be a bachelor when you meet a beautiful woman in the future. Don't you agree, Ding Meng? Ding Meng, Ding Meng? Where is he? Ding Meng had already started to doze off on the sofa. The continuous days of training and fighting had made him extremely tired, and this was the perfect time to rest. Of course, he might not be able to rest properly even if he wanted to. In Ding Meng's perception, only about 10 minutes had passed before he was woken up by a strange movement on the sofa beside him. Vader had suddenly stood up. At this moment, the lights in the entire resting area had all turned red and were flashing. Furthermore, the alarm in the cabin had also started to buzz. Buzz, buzz, buzz. What's going on? Vader quickly rushed into the cockpit. The central console in the cabin had already automatically generated a three-dimensional map of space. The green dot representing 703C was currently traveling on a flight path, but there was a flashing red dot chasing after them on the same flight path. What's going on? Ding Meng followed him in. Vader's face was ashen. We seem to have been targeted. The people of Black Gold Base can chase us all the way here? Ding Meng expressed his doubts. Vader adjusted the screen beside him and pressed on the detection system to enlarge the image at the same time. Ding Meng could finally see it clearly. In the pitch-black darkness of space, a silver flying ship that looked like a war eagle was rushing towards them at high speed, just like an eagle catching its prey. Judging from the aggressive swooping posture, it was obvious that they were not coming with good intentions. Vader's face was expressionless. This is the Black Eagle 5A Falcon flying ship from the Black Gold Interstellar Transport Ship No. 3. It's the only long-range attack ship on it. Ding Meng couldn't help but ask, "You've seen it before?" Actually, he shouldn't have asked this question. Not only had Vader seen it before, he had seen it too many times. He knew very well how powerful this flying ship was, and that it was definitely not something a civilian transport ship could withstand. Although the Swordfish was fast, it didn't have any weapons. At most, it had one or two thermal decoy machines installed to defend against interstellar pirates, commonly known as fake targets. Looking again at the various icons and data on the screen, Vader was resolute. It's an electronic scan. It's very likely that they've tracked us through thermal energy. We should be able to shake them off. As he spoke, he operated the screen. Soon, the giant steel plate at the bottom of the Swordfish transport ship opened, and a small ship identical in appearance to number 703C was released. This thing was a thermal decoy machine, which was usually used by civilian spaceships when they encountered interstellar pirates. The tail of the fake target spewed out an even more intense and dazzling crystal flame, and it flew forward at an even faster speed. Then, it made a big turn and flew off in a different direction. The principle behind this was actually quite simple. It would cause the pursuers behind to make the wrong judgment and follow the wrong target. After the fake target turned and flew off, the icons and data on the screen slowly returned to normal, gradually changing from a fiery red to a normal azure color. Vader let out a slight sigh of relief. That's good. We should have shaken them off. Before he could finish his sigh of relief, a new screen automatically rose from the control panel, indicating that new information had been transmitted. Even Ding Meng was aware of this operation. It was certain that the other party had completely ascertained his coordinates through ion detection, and then forcibly connected to him. Sure enough, the rays from the sky descended, and the remote projection quickly synthesized Bane's image. What a surprise, Officer Vader. You're actually on number 703C as well. Are you trying to escape to the Norse Empire? Baines looked to be about the same age as Vader, but his appearance was even more dignified than the Marshal's. Presumably, he was used to giving orders. Seeing that Baines was actually personally piloting a spaceship to pursue them, Vader's hands and feet turned cold. Once he and Ding Meng fell into Bane's hands, he didn't know whether Ding Meng would be fine or not, but he would definitely be finished. He had seen the cruel methods Baines and the others used to deal with traitors, and he definitely didn't want to see it a second time. He also didn't want to experience that feeling himself. Baines looked at Ding Meng. "You must be Ding Meng." Ding Meng's face darkened and he didn't answer. Saying anything now would be superfluous. Baines continued, "I'll catch up to you in 20 minutes, so I'll give you 20 minutes to make the best choice in your life. If you take the initiative to stop and hand over the memory chips, I can guarantee your safety. If you continue to stubbornly drive forward, don't blame me for using some methods that even I don't want to use on you after I catch you. That will be unforgettable for the rest of your life. Mr. Ding Meng, I hope you can seriously consider my suggestion." "I'll consider it." Ding Meng immediately turned off the instant communication. Vader looked at Ding Meng with a hint of gratitude. Ding Meng didn't compromise, which meant that he could still be saved. Once Ding Meng surrendered, it was basically announcing his impending death in advance. Ding Meng frowned. "Is there any other way we can escape?" "Use the ion drive. We have to at least give it a try." Even Vader himself didn't have the confidence to answer this question. The Swordfish had an ion drive, but didn't the more advanced Falcon spaceship have one as well? Exhilarating was just delaying the enemy's pursuit. It was just a final struggle before death. From another point of view, speeding up was hastening one's own demise. Chapter 48. In the depths of space, the tail of the Swordfish transport ship spat out blue crystal flames as it frantically fled forward, leaving a long tail in its wake. The air in the cockpit seemed to have frozen. It was so quiet that only the data reports from the various screens could be heard. The alarms were so loud that it was suffocating. Ding Meng opened a telepathic channel. "Little rascal, do you have any ideas?" Little rascal replied, "I don't have any ideas either." "Ding Meng, whether or not you can charge out will depend on you." Ding Meng couldn't help but smile bitterly. It was true that origin ability users were powerful, but they weren't powerful enough to contend against an assault ship. However, waiting for death wasn't a solution. Ding Meng could only secretly hide his claws on his wrists. If the other party forcefully boarded the ship, he would kill as many as he could. Even if he died, he would die calmly. He absolutely couldn't kneel and beg for mercy. He knew that begging for mercy was useless. His fate would be even more miserable if he did. Just based on the fact that he had killed Julie, there was no way the other party would let him go. The flowery words of these mercenary leaders were just a bunch of nonsense in his eyes. He never believed them. On the Falcon, the person personally piloting the ship wasn't Baines, but the blonde lady. At this moment, the tail of the Swordfish ship was clearly visible on the screen in front of her. She had seen too many low-level escape tricks like fake targets. They couldn't fool her at all. "Officer Baines, should we launch an attack?" the blonde lady asked. Baines replied, "Don't launch an attack for now. The memory chips can't be damaged in any way. We need to capture them alive." The blonde lady immediately operated. "Start the magnetic interference program. Activate the ion force field. Prepare to board the ship. Target: capture everyone on 703C alive." Baines nodded in satisfaction. "Let's see how you can escape this time." On the Swordfish ship, Vader's head was dripping with cold sweat. The detection screen didn't need to be magnified, it was already very clear. The Falcon ship was right behind them and would catch up in at most 3 to 5 minutes. When that time came, a large number of mechas would be released, and everyone would be meat on the chopping board. "Looks like you guys are in trouble." The sloppy man appeared at the cabin door and leaned lazily against it. "It's not as if. It's happening." Ding Meng glanced at him. "You don't look panicked at all." "Why should I panic?" The sloppy man walked over and looked at the detection screen. A smile appeared on his face again. "Hee hee, it's the Falcon attack ship. I can't attract such a big trouble. Looks like they're not here to deal with me. I'm relieved. Vader glared at him fiercely. He thought to himself, how can you still be in the mood to make sarcastic remarks at a time like this? However, he had underestimated the scruffy-looking man's ability to make sarcastic remarks. I'm very curious. This Falcon flying ship has already flown so close. Why hasn't it opened fire? Ding Meng could not help but laugh. He was so angry that he laughed. Yeah, why didn't you open fire? Why are there so many ridiculous whys? The sloppy man stared at him. I think you're a thief. Ding Meng was curious. Why do you say that? The sloppy man said, you guys must have stolen something from them. They've caught up but haven't opened fire. I think they're trying to force their way onto the ship to capture you guys alive. Ding Meng was expressionless. You're really smart. That's for sure. The sloppy man was not modest at all. Let me tell you, I'm not just smart. Look at the formation behind us. They're definitely trying to fly up and use magnetic interference to disrupt the autopilot's flight path. They're going to fly in a straight line, then use the ion force field to fix their position and connect the two ships. Finally, they'll send Mecha up to deal with you guys. Vader looked at him with some surprise. This guy could actually see through something that even he could not guess. Ding Meng had an idea. Then, since you're so smart, is there any way to avoid it? Ha! The sloppy man laughed again. You want me to help you? Ding Meng laughed as well. That depends on whether you're smart enough. I've never had any interest in helping others. The sloppy man shook his head and looked like he was about to leave. However, after taking 2 steps, he turned back. However, since you treated me to steak, I have to show you what I'm capable of. Where's the AI of the command system? Where is it? Ding Meng hurriedly pointed at the mechanical screen on the workbench. The scruffy-looking man swaggered over and casually tapped on the virtual keyboard a few times. Then, the screen showed the most primitive data and code. Vader was still looking at him suspiciously when he saw the sloppy man's 10 fingers tapping at an unbelievable speed. At the same time, he was mumbling something. Releasing magnetic and force fields is based on signal transmission. In other words, their transmission command must be connected to our navigation channel. As long as we know their code, we can decode their transmission command. Simply put, if they can connect to us, we can also connect to them. He was still shaking his head. Vader was so anxious that he was about to pee himself. Looking out the side window, the ferocious face of the Falcon spacecraft was already visible to the naked eye. At this moment, the sloppy man's fingers tapped fiercely. Success! At the same time, in the command cabin of the flying ship, the entire cabin shook violently. Baines and the staff around him staggered and almost fell to the ground. What's going on? Baines asked sternly. The blonde woman's expression also changed. Officer Baines, our magnetic and force field signals have suddenly been cut off. Our speed has also weakened. I suspect that the other party has hidden hackers on board. Hackers were not a rare profession in this era. There were countless hackers active on the International Space Network. Although they did not have as much power as Origin ability users, their control over technology could still produce unexpected results. The Falcon spacecraft seemed to have been bewitched for a moment. Then, the Swordfish spacecraft shot out like an arrow, leaving the other party far behind in an instant. Vader's anxious expression immediately turned into pleasant surprise. I really couldn't tell that you were actually an expert. However, the sloppy man was not pleased with himself this time. Instead, his expression was solemn as he let out a long sigh. I have bad news to tell you. What bad news? Ding Meng and Vader asked in unison. The sloppy man pointed at the screen on the other side of the workbench. The screen did not turn red. Instead, it directly generated a new data model. A quantum probe has been transmitted. Ding Meng also understood this point. Compared to ionic energy, quantum energy was a more advanced and powerful force. In layman's terms, it was like the difference between an origin ability user and an origin ability warrior. As soon as he finished speaking, the remote projection appeared again. However, this time, the projection was not Bane's, but the projection of a military officer. Ding Meng only glanced at it. His intuition told him that this military officer was definitely not an ordinary human just by looking at his appearance and temperament. He was someone at the level of an origin ability warrior or above. The military officer had already begun speaking. This is the Norse Empire's interstellar patrol fleet, a transport ship of the Holy Grail Federation's Shingda Aerospace Company, Limited. You have approached Nebula TCP-121. This area is under the jurisdiction of the Empire. Please turn off your ion engines and take the initiative to approach the fleet. Enter the port for inspection. If you do not cooperate with the inspection, we will use force. F*CK. Ding Meng and Vader were both dumbfounded. How could they be so unlucky as to encounter the Empire's patrol fleet? The Norse Empire and the Holy Grail Federation had always been at odds with each other. If the Federation's spaceship fell into the hands of the Empire's fleet, even if it did not die, it would lose a layer of skin. Although Vader was in contact with the Empire, now that everyone was on the Federation's transport ship, it would be very troublesome to explain. They might not even be willing to believe him. However, the most dangerous thing was still Ding Meng. He did not have any citizenship at all. The Empire was different from the Federation. It was possible that the other party would treat him as a refugee and directly destroy him as a humanitarian. The sloppy man looked at Vader with a smile that was not a smile. See, you think you're so smart. You think you can run away by turning on the ion drive. In the end, you caused too much of a commotion and attracted even more vicious things. Hee, now we're all done for. Chapter 49. Ding Meng and the others were not the ones who were really worried, but Bane sighed. This was because the patrol fleet's quantum probe was also connected to their communication channel, and the warning was completely different. This is the Norse Empire's interstellar patrol fleet, the Falcon attack spacecraft of Route 112A2CD. You are close to the Nebula TCP-121. This is an area under the jurisdiction of the Empire. You have 5 minutes to turn back. No matter what you did before, we will let bygones be bygones. If you do not turn back, we will use force to expel you, and you will bear all the consequences. This is the first warning. Hearing this, the blonde's expression also became serious. Oh no, Officer Baines. They think we are interstellar pirates. It would be strange if they did not think of them as interstellar pirates. Baines was furious. The black gold base could not see the light of day, and all the spacecraft in the base did not have any markings. Regardless of whether it was the Federation or the Empire, when they saw their unorthodox spacecraft, they would associate them with interstellar pirates. When dealing with interstellar pirates, these regular fleets would never reason with you, especially the Norse Empire's fleet, which had always been known for being tough and domineering. They would treat you like a stray dog. Baines turned his head to look at the map. The swordfish was flying in front of him, and the Falcon flying ship was very close to it. However, the problem was that on another route in the distance there were many flashing red dots. There were at least 20 starships in the Empire's patrol fleet, and Baines did not doubt the existence of powerful assault ships. Calculate. If we take down 703C before the third warning, how long will it take? Baines appeared very calm. The blonde was shocked. Officer, if we execute the attack program, I'm afraid the memory. Baines coldly interrupted her. According to the customer's request, we can destroy the memory under extreme circumstances. This will not violate the agreement. If the memory falls into the hands of others, the consequences will only be more serious. Hurry up and act. The blonde stopped arguing and quickly lowered her head to calculate. 1 minute and 12 seconds. Baines clenched his teeth. Prepare to attack. At the same time, the swordfish's cockpit flashed red, and the alarm went off. The system's voice sounded. Dangerous energy scan detected and locked onto the ship. All personnel prepare for impact. Damn, he's really going for the kill. Vader truly admired Bane's guts for daring to make a move right under the nose of the Empire's patrol fleet. The sloppy man looked relaxed. Let me guess, they are going to use cannons to deal with us. Ding Meng immediately stared at him. You have a way, don't you? The sloppy man said, if you treat me to a good meal next time, I can help you again. Ding Meng was also gritting his teeth. If we survive this time, I'll treat you to countless meals. The sloppy man beamed with joy. Not bad, you're very generous. I've always liked to deal with generous people. After saying that, he turned around and pressed a series of buttons on the optical computer. In space, the Falcon flying at high speed seemed to have turned into a pupil of light from afar. The pupil of light slowly gathered energy and gradually became bright and dazzling. After condensing for a moment, it flew out of the main body of the ship with a whoosh. A ball of bright white energy was seen crashing into the transport ship at an extremely fast speed. Along the way, the ball of energy changed into a sword-like arrowhead and streaked across the night sky like a comet, shocking the entire world. The red light inside the transport ship was no longer flashing. It was completely still, a sign that it was about to be bombarded. Vader felt as if his heart had stopped beating. The system's voice began to count down. Preparing for impact. 5, 4, 3, 2. Just as the cannon shell was about to hit the rear of the transport ship, something inconceivable happened. As if it had been enchanted, the cannon shell actually took a big turn and flew into the distance, disappearing into the depths of the universe. Where at? Baines couldn't believe his eyes. The Empire's patrol fleet didn't react either. It was likely that the people above were also dumbfounded by this scene. What the hell was going on? Was this a kid's family? Are the two of you acting? Were you messing with us? The blonde woman's expression also became bewildered. The other party, the hacker on the ship, is very skilled. We used an automatic positioning system and an automatic tracking system. It's very likely that he took control of our weapons flight system through the International Space Network and tampered with the internal data. The cannon shell couldn't hit them. Vader was already panting heavily. There was no longer any doubt in his eyes as he looked at the unkempt man. Now there was only worship. You, who the hell are you? The unkempt man spread his hands and said, I've already shown them mercy. If I had directed the cannon shell to fly towards the Empire's fleet, you can imagine what would have happened to them. Ding Meng sighed helplessly. You should have diverted the trouble to someone else. If you didn't kill them in one blow, they wouldn't have let it go. However, he couldn't blame the other party now, because the unkempt man definitely didn't know about the K-virus memory chip. Vader was still in shock. Looks like we should be safe this time. The unkempt man said, You're wrong. Vader was stunned. I'm wrong. The unkempt man said, I'll give you a suggestion. Send a distress signal to the Empire's fleet right now. Vader was stunned. Why? The unkempt man said, Let's continue guessing. If their commander has any brains, he should have shut down the entire ship's signal transmission system, completely cut off the connection to the International Space Network, enter the command system's safe mode, and then use the most traditional manual mode to deal with us. Let me think. Cannons, pulse cannons, and heat cannons should have a hard time hitting us. Oh right, they also have particle laser cannons. If they have a shooting expert on the ship, then let's prepare to be finished once again. This time, there was no need for him to remind him. Vader rushed to the central control station like a mad dog and sent out an SOS distress signal at top speed. In fact, it was already too late to send out a distress signal. The Falcon spacecraft had caught up with them again. 4 metal cannon barrels had already extended from the bottom of the hull. The tips of the barrels weren't cannon muzzles, but 4 sparkling blue metal balls. Crackling with energy arcs, they seemed to be gathering energy again, and the blue color quickly turned red. This time, the unkempt man's expression was a little serious. He enlarged the optical computer's screen and cut to the first-person view of the swordfish spacecraft. From Ding Meng's point of view, they were just like the spacecraft itself, flying at high speed in space. The radar at the bottom left indicated that there was a threat behind them, and at the same time, densely packed data was being refreshed rapidly. Vader looked at him in shock. "You want to manually pilot the spacecraft?" The unkempt man glanced at him. "Do you have a problem with that?" No problem," Vader stammered. He had only thought that Baines was bold, but now he saw someone who was even bolder. He actually dared to manually pilot the spacecraft at such high speed. Was this person crazy? Chapter 50. In fact, it was not impossible to manually pilot a spacecraft during interstellar travel. Under normal circumstances, as long as it was on a normal route or in a safe area, it could be manually piloted. The problem was that the sloppy man had now deviated from the preset route, and at the same time, the ion drive was not turned off. This was very risky because the reaction of ordinary humans was limited. If the speed was too fast, it was easy to crash into a meteorite belt. The map showed that there were as many meteorite belts as there were hairs on a cow near the TCP-121 nebula. On the other side of the starry sky, a mighty and domineering patrol fleet was also heading in the direction of Ding Meng. In the bridge of the leading ship, the officer was paying close attention to the movements of both sides. He had no hostility toward the swordfish spaceship. Although the other party was a Federation ship, civilian spaceships posed no threat to the military. Instead, he was quite dissatisfied with the pirates' Falcon spaceship because the other party turned a deaf ear to their warnings. However, the strange scene of the cannon shells just now had piqued his interest. "I can't believe that a civilian spaceship hid such a high-level hacker." The officer seemed to be sighing. At this time, the adjutant on the side pointed at the screen and shouted, "Sir, look, the pirate ship is firing again." The Falcon spaceship's laser cannons indeed shot out a large number of red electric particles. The appearance of these lasers was actually very different from the bullets of an energy machine gun, but the electric particles were shot out in a large string. The blonde was very skilled at shooting. She was now sitting upright and using the mechanical joystick in front of the screen to manually operate. She did not aim and then fire, but fired toward the left side of the swordfish. Then, the laser connected into a line and pulled the line to the swordfish. To put it bluntly, it was a fool's shot. The method was a bit clumsy, but it was quite practical in this high-speed flight. The success rate was higher than directly aiming and firing. However, she underestimated the sloppy man's strength. As soon as she fired, the radar began to warn her. The swordfish also flew diagonally to the right. It flew very well. It did not make a sharp turn, but moved slowly in accordance with the frequency of the laser. Just from this point alone, the blonde woman showed a look of admiration. She knew that she had met a fellow player. If the other party made a big turn or made a sharp turn, it proved that he was a rookie. Because even if you could avoid the first round, there was no room for you to avoid the second round. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time to recharge the battery. The sloppy man looked very relaxed. "It's impossible for a single cannon to hit me." Just because he was relaxed didn't mean that Vader was relaxed as well. Vader wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Thank goodness, brother, you are indeed an expert. I believe in you." Ding Meng suddenly said, "What if the enemy isn't using a single cannon?" The sloppy man glanced at him and smiled. "Good question. Look, aren't they here in the second round?" The radar indicated that the swordfish behind them was coming again. Little rascal couldn't help but say, "Hey, Ding Meng, you jinx. You really have a soft spot." The second round of shooting was the simultaneous firing of the number 2 and number 3 cannons. It was the same stupid shooting method, but the difference was that the blonde woman used 2 laser beams to attack from the left and right, completely sandwiching the swordfish. "Let's see how you dodge this time." The blonde woman was a little excited. Then the transport ship should be finished. The adjutant sighed. The officer nodded in agreement. The swordfish transport ship's shortcomings were obvious. In order to pursue speed and load capacity, it was designed in the shape of a long shark. Although it was fast when coupled with ion drive, it was very slow and inflexible. To put it bluntly, it was convenient for you to retreat quickly if you encountered an enemy. However, if you were locked on by the enemy's firepower, it was basically a dead end. The fiery red swordfish quickly closed in, as dazzling as fireworks in the night sky. Vader's retina could clearly reflect the fiery red of the swordfish's lasers outside the cabin. They were getting brighter and closer. It's over. Vader closed his eyes in agony. Only Ding Meng stared fixedly at the unkempt man. He saw his fingers curl into a claw and twist fiercely on the screen. The first-person view on the screen also twisted 360 degrees. Then, the ship shook violently, and a series of muffled pa-pa-pa-pa sounds came from above, as if something had been hit. The unkempt man's expression relaxed again. It's fine, it's fine. Everyone, don't panic. The laser probably scraped the surface of the steel plates. It's not a big deal. That was really the case because the system sounded an alarm. Warning, warning. Hull damage 0. 37%. Looking at the 3D model of the ship again, only a few layers of steel plates at the top had turned completely red. It was obvious that they had been damaged. Vader opened his eyes again. Clutching his heaving chest, he looked at the big screen in agitation. I said, brother, I believe you. However, at the same time, the blonde woman almost jumped out of her seat. This can't be. Baines was also dumbfounded. The two powerful beams of fire were clearly about to crush the swordfish, but for some reason, the swordfish turned in a circle at the moment of the combined attack and miraculously dodged it. After the second round of fire, Battery number 2 and battery number 3 also needed to be recharged. The officer and adjutant on the lead ship were also dumbfounded. If the swordfish could perform such a dodging maneuver, they believed that many experts could do it. However, to be able to dodge so precisely, the conditions required were really harsh. Not only did the pilot have to be very familiar with the structure, principles, and performance of the two ships, but they also had to be very familiar with the Falcon's weapon system. Most importantly, they had to have a good grasp of the timing in the moment of dodging. If they were a fraction of a second faster or a fraction of a second slower, the ship would be destroyed and people would die. They had to make a precise turn at the moment when the two beams of fire crossed. The officer held his chin and looked at the screen with interest. Interesting. The adjutant said, Sir, should we stop that pirate ship? The officer immediately glared at him. Why are we helping the Federation ship? Are you trying to break the rules? The adjutant immediately stopped talking and resentfully retreated. The officer murmured, I'm very curious. Who are the pilots of these two ships? Their standards aren't low. If I were the shooter of that pirate ship, I would wait for another minute. When all 4 batteries are fully charged, we'll open fire together. Let's see how this transport ship dodges then. In fact, the blonde lady was also thinking the same thing. She was one of the few extremely skilled origin ability statisticians in the company. When she saw that the other party had dodged the first round of fire, she had admired them from the bottom of her heart. After all, in this day and age, people of the same trade were too precious. However, when she saw that the other party had actually passed the second round in such a thrilling manner, her fighting spirit was completely ignited. This sister wants to see who you are and whether you can dodge my full-force attack. She wasn't the only one who thought this way. Even Baines had the same idea. After 2 rounds of fire, the Empire's patrol fleet had actually remained indifferent. They hadn't even issued a second warning. Fine, this daddy will definitely destroy you today. If not for the saying that a person's courage came from the indulgence of others, this saying really made sense. When he saw that the Falcon ship behind them had actually stopped attacking for a while, Vader felt a little relieved. They don't seem to have any intention of continuing to attack? Wrong, the sloppy man replied carelessly. Vader's eyes widened. I was wrong again? The sloppy man stared at the radar. This shooter of the other party isn't simple. I think he's most likely waiting for the batteries to recharge, so that he can fire all 4 batteries at once. Vader panicked again. What do we do? Can't we dodge? The sloppy man said, we shouldn't be able to dodge. This swordfish's agility is too low. Hee, I'll stick to my old words. Everyone, prepare to die together. Chapter 51. System Voice. Weapon Charging. System charging complete. System requesting authorization. The blonde woman's lips curled into an arc when she heard the string of notifications. She sneered. If you can still dodge this time, then I'll really admire you. After saying that, she first pressed the 4 firing buttons, then fiercely turned the mechanical joystick. From the vantage point of the lead ship, the 4 turrets poured out a large amount of electric particle laser projectiles with a whoosh. Following the Falcon spacecraft's high-speed rotation, the electric particle projectiles were like a large net that enveloped the swordfish. The subsequent laser projectiles twisted and rotated with the spacecraft's rotation, twisting and turning like a spiral toward the swordfish. Without superb piloting skills and rich shooting experience, it was impossible to fire such a bizarre and spectacular attack. The officer and adjutant held their breaths at the same time. They couldn't imagine how the swordfish would be able to struggle this time. Under such dense and powerful firepower, any civilian transport ship would be blown to smithereens. Ding Meng and Vader kept a close eye on the sloppy man. Now, everyone could only pin their last hope on him. Whether or not a miracle could be created depended on how he operated the spacecraft. The sloppy man's expression finally turned serious. This time, he didn't touch the screen with one hand. Instead, he stretched out both hands at the same time and pressed them on the top and bottom of the screen respectively. Then, he rapidly twisted and shook. It was a pity that Ding Meng wasn't a piloting expert. If he was, he would have been able to see that the sloppy man's shaking pattern perfectly matched the trajectory of the opponent's laser projectiles. The subtlety and charm of this could only be understood by an expert of the same trade. The blonde woman quickly understood. When the large net was cast, the swordfish didn't make any large movements to dodge. Instead, it continued to fly diagonally to the right, as if deliberately hanging on to the edge of the large net. The side wing of the spacecraft immediately burst into white flames with a bang. System voice. Warning! Warning! Hull damage is 33%. Vader's heart was about to jump out of his chest. On the 3-dimensional model, the left side of the hull was gradually turning from pale yellow to fiery red. This degree of damage basically pointed to disaster. Ding Meng, on the other hand, was very calm. He could tell that the sloppy man had purposely allowed the spaceship to be hit. He believed that the sloppy man had done so for a reason. Sure enough, the swordfish spaceship was knocked into a spiral by the violent tremors. Then, it spun at an acute angle of 30 degrees. Because the lasers were too concentrated, it looked like it was going to be grazed or hit. The bow and stern of the spaceship twisted at high speed, but the center of the spaceship was stable and motionless. Like a propeller, it miraculously avoided the rain of lasers. Just like a small fish in the seaweed, no matter how the seaweed twisted and whipped, it just couldn't touch the slippery fish. The officer's eyes were finally transfixed. To be able to drive an ordinary swordfish transport ship to such an appalling degree, to be honest, even he couldn't do it. The adjutant also had a look of disbelief on his face. Is this a manual operation? Is he still human? This was definitely a manual operation because if the spaceship used the automatic dodging program hosted by the system in order to protect the ship's endurance, it was impossible to perform such inhuman actions. The blonde woman finally opened her mouth wide. She had no choice but to accept it now. The opponent was a freak among freaks. How the F***ck could he dodge like that? The turret was about to enter a long recharge mode. She was out of options now, so she couldn't help but turn to look at the officer beside her. Bane's gaze fell on the three-dimensional map. He had already seen clearly that the swordfish had changed course again and was flying in the direction of the Dynasty's fleet. He gritted his teeth. How much longer do they have before they enter the range of the Dynasty's fleet? The blonde woman instantly understood and quickly pressed on the screen. They've already been hit. If they don't turn off the ion engine, there's a 30% chance that the spaceship will disintegrate. They can reach the port of the search and rescue ship in 7 minutes and 11 seconds at the earliest. 7 minutes and 11 seconds, this was the last time they had left. Turning back now was definitely not a problem, but if they continued to attack, even if they managed to take down the enemy within 7 minutes, the result would be that they couldn't turn back because they couldn't escape. The Dynasty's fleet would definitely take care of them. Activate the rapid recharge mode and execute the extreme attack sequence. Bane's expression was firm, and a trace of determination appeared in his eyes. The blonde woman's expression darkened. She knew that her officer was determined to perish together with the enemy. They definitely couldn't let the memory chip fall into the hands of others. To put it bluntly, the extreme attack sequence meant that they had to take down the swordfish even if they had to exhaust all of the ship's energy. They didn't give the enemy a way out, nor did they give themselves a way out. When the time came, the Dynasty's fleet would turn around and attack them. Everyone was likely to be buried in this vast universe. At this moment, the situation on Ding Meng's side wasn't looking too good. The left side of the hull was completely destroyed, and the speed of the ship immediately slowed down. Furthermore, the ion drive hadn't been turned off. The entire ship could no longer withstand the pressure brought about by high-speed flight. The system was constantly alarms, and the damage to the hull continued to rise. 16, 33%, 17, 29%, 18, 11%, 19. 56%. Vader's teeth seemed to be bleeding from clenching them. We should be able to be rescued before they finish recharging, right? The sloppy man regained his relaxed demeanor. Wrong. Right now, Vader was most afraid of hearing him say those two words. Wrong again? The sloppy man smiled as he glanced at Ding Meng. I'm very curious. What exactly did you steal from them that they have to be so persistent? Ding Meng couldn't help but be infected by this fellow's bearing. He returned the smile. I stole something that I can't return to them. The sloppy man could only spread his hands at Vader. Then there's no other way. It seems that they won't retreat until they've completely destroyed us. Vader was still unconvinced. So what? Brother, your flying skills are so high. They won't be able to hit us. The sloppy man sighed. If they're determined to kill us, I'm afraid that they're rapidly recharging right now. Next, they'll use the Falcon attack ship's extreme attack mode to deal with us. At the end of the day, Vader was still hoping for a fluke. What if they don't use the extreme attack mode? The sloppy man smiled again. Using your logic to explain it, then there's a 99% chance that they'll use it. Vader couldn't help but roar loudly. Is there really no other way? The sloppy man looked at him with interest. Yes. This time, we're really done for. I won't speak carelessly. The alarm suddenly sounded again. The system's voice was cold and merciless. Warning! Warning! A large amount of high-risk energy scan has been detected and has locked onto the ship. All personnel are to prepare for impact. Vader's pupils immediately contracted. The sloppy man really wasn't spouting nonsense. The people of Black Gold Base would rather die than let them go. Ding Meng, who had been very calm all this time, suddenly opened his mouth. I have an idea. Vader was like a drowning man who had grasped at a life-saving straw. What idea? Brother, hurry up and tell me. As long as we can get out of here alive, I guarantee you an unimaginable reward. Ding Meng's expression looked even calmer than the sloppy man's. Use the escape pod. There might still be a glimmer of hope. Vader didn't ask any more questions. Like a frightened deer, he flew out of the cockpit. At this moment, the sloppy man and Ding Meng actually stood still in the same spot. It wasn't until the cockpit door closed that the sloppy man looked at Ding Meng with a strange expression. He slowly opened his mouth and said, "I just realized that you're definitely not a good person." "I'm not a good person to begin with," Ding Meng replied indifferently. Chapter 52. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The spherical muzzles of the particle laser turrets once again lit up with blue electric arcs. What was different from before was that this time, the energy condensed by the new electric arcs was clearly stronger. The brightness, color, and energy flow were all qualitatively improved. From afar, it looked like an extremely bright disk. After a long time, the 4 turrets fired a large red ball of artillery shells that flew toward the tail of the swordfish like a meteor chasing after the moon. The artillery shell was like a rolling snowball, growing bigger and brighter as it flew. It was just like a miniature sun crashing into the swordfish spaceship. The cockpit door on the swordfish opened again, and Ding Meng and the sloppy man walked out side by side. Now that the spaceship had switched back to autopilot mode, the two of them had different expressions. Ding Meng appeared very calm, but his expression was thoughtful. The sloppy man appeared very calm, as if he didn't care about the storm of destruction that was about to come. However, the two of them had one thing in common, and that was that they were exceptionally calm. "I've realized that you're quite knowledgeable about human psychology." The sloppy man actually said such an inexplicable sentence on the eve of destruction. Others might not understand this, but Ding Meng definitely did. Vader's psychological defenses had probably collapsed a long time ago. When Ding Meng said that there was still a glimmer of hope by using the escape pod, he would definitely run to the SOS pod without hesitation. It was like a drowning person who thought that there was still hope for survival even if he was holding onto a small piece of wood. Even if the escape pod was small, how could it avoid detection by the radar? Once it flew out, it would only result in an even faster death. At the end of the day, Ding Meng was trying to lure Vader into suicide. The sloppy man had undoubtedly seen through this, which was why he said that Ding Meng wasn't a good person. He deserved to die. Ding Meng sneered. He didn't have a good impression of Vader. How many people in the black gold base had died at Vader's hands, either directly or indirectly? Ding Meng had never forgotten the scene of the child who had his finger broken by Sadler's whip and died a horrible death. This executioner, whose hands were stained with the blood of the laborers, deserved to die without a burial place, and there was no need for him to do it himself. At this moment, the snowball missile was halfway through its flight when it suddenly exploded with a bang. It turned into countless electric particles that spread out and formed a huge disk that covered the swordfish ship. The sloppy man wasn't spouting nonsense. This kind of large area attack wasn't something that could be dodged by humans. After all, the swordfish's power was limited, so it could only take this attack head-on. The disk was filled with densely packed electric particle laser bullets. Although most of them missed when they flew past the spaceship, there were still a few that hit. Boom! The rear of the spaceship began to catch fire, and smoke began to spread towards the middle of the spaceship. The entire spaceship trembled violently, and all kinds of facilities in the central hall were sent flying. The sloppy man was caught off guard by a flying chair, and he fell to the ground. His head hit a steel frame, and the shock caused his nose to bleed. However, what was strange was that Ding Meng actually reached out to help him up. What was even stranger was that the first thing the sloppy man did when he got up was neither to thank him nor to quicken his pace. Instead, he let go of Ding Meng's hand, took out a white towel from his trouser pocket, and carefully wiped the blood off his face. After that, he straightened his collar and slightly messy hair. Ding Meng looked at him, and suddenly revealed a gentle smile. "I know you're going to say, I can break my head, but my hair can't be messed up." Personal image is more important than anything else. Not bad. Looks like you've understood me a little. You really have good taste. The sloppy man smiled as well. It was a knowing smile. It was a miracle that the two of them could still smile in such a dangerous situation. Sometimes, the meeting between men was often in these inconceivable moments. The sloppy man stood still again, and his eyes looked straight ahead. Finally, a solemn expression appeared on his face. Even if a person is going to die, he should die with dignity and dignity. He should die like a gentleman. He shouldn't die like a stray dog by the roadside. If Ding Meng had heard such strange words in the past, he would have thought that the man was crazy. However, at this moment, he admired the sloppy man very much. This man was almost powerless, but he was not afraid of his impending death. He was not flustered at all. This was the boldness and breadth of mind that a real man should have. This man was a true gentleman. The system announcement: Warning! Warning! Hull damage is currently at 45%. Warning! Warning! Escape pod closing down in 30 seconds. Warning! Warning! Large amount of high-risk energy detected. Scanning has locked onto this ship. All personnel, prepare for impact. The blonde woman's eyes were wide open. According to Bane's orders, they would not stop until the swordfish ship was destroyed. Therefore, the second round of cannon fire came whistling through the air. If the first two rounds were only on fire at the side and the tail of the ship, this round was a fatal blow. At least 5 or 6 laser bullets hit the ship directly. The protective alloy plates on the ship's hull were completely blown away, and the shockwave from the impact spread throughout the ship. Various parts of the ship exploded one after another, and the fire continued to spread. The entire ship was enveloped in white flames, and it was only a matter of time before it exploded. Ding Meng and the sloppy man were still strolling leisurely through the tunnel, but at the end of the tunnel was not an escape pod, but a loading pod that was usually used to imprison and transport laborers. The swordfish had a total of 1,780 hibernation pods. The hibernation pods definitely couldn't be used for escape, but the loading pods could be launched in all directions. The hibernation pods were 10 times smaller than the escape pods. No matter how advanced the Falcon's radar was, it wouldn't be able to pinpoint the location of the hibernation pods accurately. Moreover, with 1780 dormant pods scattered in all directions, how would you know where they were? Dormant pods that were well nourished would generally last for 30 days. If they were unlucky, they would become nameless coffins floating in space after 30 days. However, if they were lucky, they would be discovered by the Imperial fleet or picked up by other ships, and they would be saved. Of course, in the boundless universe, the chances of survival were really minuscule, but at least it was much better than Vader using the escape pod to fly out and commit suicide. The sloppy man's escape route was hidden here, and Ding Meng had undoubtedly thought of this as well, so the two of them tacitly sent Vader to his death. System voice: Warning, warning, escape pod has been shut down. Launch countdown: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Hearing this voice, Ding Meng imitated the sloppy man's expression after eating his steak and muttered, "What a pity." "What's a pity?" This time, it was the sloppy man's turn to be curious. Ding Meng smiled. "It's a pity that I won't be able to see the escape pod being shot down outside." The sloppy man also smiled, and his smile was relaxed and cheerful. "It's a pity that I won't be able to see it either." Chapter 53. The Falcon spaceship was still launching its attacks. Snowball shells were fired out one after another. The swordfish spaceship in front of them was no longer an agile and slippery fish. It was about to become a dead fish. It was a good thing to be a dead fish. The spaceship was now a fireball in its final flight. Baines stared at the map. "Keep a close eye on it. Shoot any suspicious spaceship that appears." The blonde lady pointed at the screen. "Officer Baines, a miniature spaceship is coming out. It must be an escape pod." The radar wouldn't lie. On the three-dimensional map, The red cursor representing the swordfish was flickering at a very fast frequency. This was a sign that it was about to explode. At this moment, a tiny dot flew out from the cursor, flashing with a weak yellow light. If one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice. Baines said, "Zoom in." The image quickly zoomed in. It was a UK-type escape pod. From the outside, it looked like a spherical spaceship. The alloy on the surface of the escape pod was extremely hard. Even if it collided at high speed, it would not break. It was very suitable for escape. Baines finally smiled, but he only spat out one word coldly. "Kill." The blonde lady smiled too. Since they were on the escape pod, there was no use for a hacker like you. She quickly connected the control system to the International Space Network and switched the shooting mode to automatic aiming. This time, the 4 turrets opened fire at the same time. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Electrical particles covered the sky, completely forming a cylindrical trajectory that surrounded the escape pod. This situation was like a heavy downpour on the ground. No matter what was inside, there was no way you could avoid it. As the electrical particles covered the escape pod, the alloy steel plate on the surface of the escape pod was immediately hit with a ping 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 sound. But as the spaceship continued to increase its firepower, the steel plate began to burn and soon melted. And then there was no and then. The escape pod was reduced to nothing under the fiery red cylindrical firepower. The system's voice sounded. "Warning, warning, hull damage is 86.89%. All units, please evacuate immediately. All units, please evacuate immediately." The interior of the swordfish had turned into a sea of fire. Ding Meng and the sloppy man were facing rows upon rows of neatly arranged hibernation cabins. The white cabins were connected together, giving off the feeling of a graveyard. Ding Meng casually opened the hatch of one of the cabins, then turned around and said, "Before I leave, I want to ask you a question." The sloppy man asked, "What is it?" Ding Meng stared at him. "I still don't know your name." The sloppy man revealed a self-deprecating smile. "I'm afraid the two of us are doomed in the end. What's the point of knowing?" "I must know." Ding Meng sounded very determined. "Even if I'm going to die in the end, I want to know the name of the person who saved me." Looking at his serious eyes, the sloppy man smiled again. This time, it was a very gentle smile. "You don't owe me anything. If it weren't for that steak, I would have starved to death. That was the best steak I've ever had." Ding Meng nodded. "You're also the best pilot I've ever seen. But like I said, I must know. You're a very special guy." The sloppy man sighed. "If you must know, I can tell you. My name is Exhilarating. Exhilarating as in hard work, Jia as in hero. Exhilarating, Exhilarating. Ding Meng repeated the name 5 or 6 times before he looked up. "Exhilarating, thank you." Exhilarating smiled. "You're welcome. We're about to die." Ding Meng said, "All right, let's go together." After that, the two of them entered the hibernation cabins. The hatch quickly closed, and the system began the countdown. Loading the cabins. Prepare to launch. 10, 9, 8, 7. At the same time, in the Imperial fleet, the adjutant pointed at the detection screen and said, "Sir, that transport ship is probably done for this time." The officer nodded. He could already see that in the deep and eternal space, the transport ship was exploding violently. The hull of the ship had completely turned into a bright white fireball. All sorts of metal wreckage floated out from within. It was obvious that the ship was disintegrating. Finally, the fireball slowly disappeared, and space returned to darkness. However, in the depths of the darkness, a black carrier that resembled a missile was opening. The outer metal plates kept falling off, and one by one, the white hibernation cabins were ejected in all directions, flying into the endless depths of space. Baines and the others could not see this hidden image, but it could not escape the detection of the leading ship's advanced radar. The officer was already giving orders. "Send out 3 jellyfish aircraft to search. Check the wreckage and confirm their identities. Teams 6, 9, and 12 prepare to depart. If you find any survivors, bring them back immediately. Team 1, set out. Check the nearby area and see if you can find anything valuable. The adjutant walked up. Sir, what about the pirate ship? The officer glanced at the screen. The Falcon spaceship was turning. His tone was very calm. No matter who they are, bring them back. What he meant by bring them back was, no matter if they were dead or alive, even if they were just bones, they had to bring them back. Only then would they be able to answer to their superiors. As soon as he gave the order, 2 blue dots in the Imperial fleet immediately left the formation and flew in the direction that Baines and the others had escaped. Of course, they were not real blue dots. They were completely blue Skywalker assault spaceship. This kind of spaceship looked like a sharp bullet head, with 8 wings spread out at the back. It had a high-power ion engine and a variety of weapons systems. It was one of the sharpest spaceships in space battles. The Skywalkers on the Falcon spaceship were like a father beating his son. It was just like how the blonde woman fought with Ding Meng and the others. You could only defend, but you couldn't fight back at all. On the other side of the space, 3 jellyfish spaceships also flew out of the fleet. This type of spaceship was exactly like its name. It looked exactly like a jellyfish. The 3 spaceships formed a triangle and kept spreading out circular ripples. This was actually a search and rescue force field. It sucked in all the tiny dust particles, escape pods, and debris from the explosion nearby. Then the mecha teams on the spaceships would fly down and check carefully. The useful things would be brought back, and the useless things would be taken care of by the cleaning team. Once the cleaning was done, the area would be like nothing had happened. The other spaceships that passed by would not be able to find any traces. While the officer was watching the cat and mouse game between the Skywalkers and the Falcon spaceships on the screen, the adjutant walked over again. Sir, we found 2 survivors among the thousands of hibernation pods. What should we do with them? The officer's eyes lit up. Oh! The adjutant hesitated. According to the rules, we can follow the standard procedure. Wait. The officer waved his hand to stop him. Bring these 2 people to the connecting cabin. I'll go down and take a look. Chapter 54. D. A soft brown ray swept across the glass panels of the hibernation cabin. The wristwatch immediately raised a screen, and rows of data appeared. Heart rate, 21 beats per minute. Body temperature, 35. 2 degrees. Breathing, 5 times per minute. Brain frequency, 66 Hz. Fatigue, 7%. Infection rate, none. Health status, normal. Sir. A group of medics in platinum armor suddenly straightened their chests and saluted. Is it these 2? The officer walked over and stood in front of the white hibernation cabin. The leader of the medics immediately greeted him. Yes, these 2 are survivors. The officer looked at the sleeping Ding Meng and Xinjie and couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. They were clearly 2 children. In his mind, the person who was able to operate the swordfish so smoothly should be a veteran pilot with plenty of experience, and definitely not a brat. Have you confirmed their identities? The officer asked again. The medic shook his head. We have activated the identification system. They are not citizens of the Norse Empire. The officer was even more disappointed. Are they people from the Holy Grail Federation? The medic looked troubled. Sir, you know that the hospital doesn't have the authority to do this. The officer nodded and said to the adjutant beside him, send the information back to the bridge and let the database check the identities of these 2 children. Yes, sir. The adjutant turned around to receive the order. The medic said again, by the way, sir, according to the scan results, these 2 should be origin ability users. The officer was finally interested. The medic brought the detector over. This device was square like a box, and the surface was a miniature holographic screen. Although the device was simple, its functions were quite powerful. The data on the screen was more detailed than the wristwatch. Not only did it mark the key data, but it could also generate images. The ray swept across exhilarating, and a human figure appeared on the holographic screen. The medic explained, "This person's physical fitness is very average. The evaluation result is H class, but there are very weak energy fluctuations in his brain. The fluctuation index is not high, only 71. The fluctuations are very intermittent and unstable. Since they are both in level 3 hibernation, our preliminary judgment is that he should have made some preliminary contact with origin ability and has an origin ability sensing point, but he hasn't condensed the origin that supports it." The officer didn't answer. He just looked at exhilarating thoughtfully. The medic was a little frightened. He couldn't guess what his superior was thinking. He could only point the detector at Ding Meng. "This person's physical fitness is very good. The evaluation result is B class. The heart area has— wait, what did you say?" The officer suddenly interrupted him, with a tone of surprise. The Norse Empire had a very strict and detailed evaluation system for the strength of origin ability users. Physical fitness was divided into SSS class, commonly known as 3 stars. SS class was 2 stars, and S class was 1 star. Only those geniuses with extraordinary talent would have these 3 grades. Next was a class B class. Let's not talk about those below B class for now. As long as an origin ability user reached B class, they were considered to have good physical fitness. As long as they were willing to cultivate diligently, their future would be bright. At the very least, they would be at the level of origin energy generals. Take the current patrol fleet for example. Of the more than 9,200 people, the vast majority of them didn't reach B class. Most of them were C class, and the highest was the officer himself, whose physical fitness was B class. As for him, he had only reached B class after more than 20 years of cultivation. The child in front of him looked to be around 20 years old. For a 20-year-old to reach B class in physical fitness, other than describing him as a genius, what else could be used to describe him? Of course, physical fitness was only one aspect of strength. It didn't represent everything. The officer stared at the medic suspiciously. "Are you sure he's a B class?" The medic felt guilty under the officer's gaze. He braced himself and replied, "Sir, our fleet isn't the Superpower Affairs Management Center, so we don't use the most professional detection equipment. Sometimes the results aren't very accurate." The officer was a little impatient. "You better not tell me that the detector is faulty." The medic suddenly stuttered. "I'll try another one right away." Someone quickly handed over a new one, but after rescanning, the result of the human figure representing Ding Meng was immediately displayed. B-class physical fitness. The officer was obviously shocked. "It really is a B-class." The medic didn't dare to say anything else and continued to report. "This person's heart has obvious origin energy fluctuations. The fluctuation index is 193, and the fluctuations are continuous and stable. Our initial judgment is that he has come into contact with origin energy and has an origin energy perception point. However, we can't infer whether or not he has an origin condensation point. In addition, he's also carrying a weapon." The officer's expression returned to indifference. "What weapon?" The medic said, "It's a carabiner, but the material is unclear." The officer sighed, and his expression was a little disappointed. Although the results of the test seemed simple, there was a huge amount of information. In the officer's mind, since Ding Meng carried a cold weapon with him, it meant that he usually practiced blade techniques and used a claw. Since it was a claw blade that was very hard to practice, it meant that its level would not be low. This level usually wouldn't be lower than a beginner origin ability user. In the Empire's evaluation standards, the 3 levels of origin ability users corresponded to 500 points, 1200 points, and 3000 points. Only after breaking through 3,000 points would you truly meet the basic requirements to become an Origin ability user. 500 points was the most orthodox standard for a beginner Origin ability user. Although you're currently in an abnormal state of hibernation at level 3, and the spontaneous fluctuations of Origin ability users are relatively weak, compared to the 1,200 points standard for an intermediate Origin ability user, you only have 193 points in Index, but you have a B-class physical fitness. What did this mean? This was a classic example of a beautiful jade without any talent. If he had awakened a few years earlier, had a good environment to cultivate in, and had the guidance of a famous teacher, he would definitely have become a great talent in the future. Even if he had normal data, he should have a B-class physical fitness and an Origin ability index of around 800 points. However, from the looks of it, this child wouldn't have any great achievements in the future. Of course, he didn't know the truth. When Ding Meng entered hibernation, the little rascal in his body would also enter an energy-saving mode. Strictly speaking, Ding Meng's Origin ability directly affected the little rascal's ability to function. However, the little rascal was an intelligent program. Before entering energy-saving mode, many of its protective functions wouldn't be turned off. For example, blocking external signals was one of them. The results of the scanner's scan weren't complete at all, but rather incomplete data. This caused the officer to make the wrong judgment. Moreover, the little rascal only had level 1 authority. The only thing it could do was block the signals of some technological devices. If the authority was high enough, the scanner's feedback could very well be that this child was just an ordinary human. An ordinary human couldn't pose any threat to the military, so it was very likely that others would ignore him, thus reducing Ding Meng's risk factor. Of course, these were all the settings of the AI program. The situation in reality was constantly changing, and no one could predict what would happen next. Chapter 55. Compared to Ding Meng's situation, the officer was obviously more interested in Xing's data. First of all, the energy fluctuations came from the brain. This meant that Xing had a high chance of becoming a talented person. For example, a researcher, a manufacturer, an inventor, a famous director, a famous author, a famous star. This covered a wide range, including all walks of life. However, the most favored by Origin energy warriors was Origin energy statisticians. Statisticians who had cultivated to a certain level had brains that were faster and more accurate than optical computers, artificial intelligence, and even the main brain of the super system. They would play a very good supporting role in battle. The larger the scale of the battle, the more obvious their role would be. The officer couldn't be blamed for thinking in this direction. No matter who it was, when they saw the swordfish's shocking roll and dodge in the rain of bullets, they would think that it was the performance of an Origin energy statistician. Thus, when the data of these two people came out, the officer was certain that this child was most likely the pilot of the swordfish. Moreover, he only had a perception point. It was normal for his energy fluctuations to be unstable. It seemed that he hadn't even reached the level of a beginner Origin ability user. To be able to have such a stunning performance with only a 71-point index, this kind of person was worthy of the title of a genius. As for the physical fitness of a grade H, it was indeed a bit lacking. However, physical fitness could be made up for by diligent training. However, innate talent was something that couldn't be obtained no matter how hard you worked. Besides, even if he was a genius in the Empire, which one of them wasn't hard-working? This was the necessary condition to become a strong person. While he was deep in thought, the adjutant finally came back. "Sir." The officer turned his head and said, "What's the situation?" The adjutant frowned. "We've checked. The two of them aren't citizens of the Holy Grail Federation. From all the data we can find, they don't belong to any country." The officer thought for a while. "You mean the two of them are interstellar refugees?" "I think they are 80%. The adjutant's expression also became thoughtful. From the flight path of the swordfish, they should be flying from the direction of the KV 3023 nebula. As far as I know, the K7 nebula is in that nebula, and it's close to the Federation. There are many remote planets that the Federation used to exile low-class people. These two children probably escaped from one of those exiled planets. You have a point. The officer snorted and said, "The Holy Grail Federation's higher-ups are full of themselves. They think that the poor are inferior. Although the blood of the inferior is not good, there are also those who work hard. Although their talent is not high, as long as they are diligent enough, they can achieve something. I think these two children must have awakened their senses during their exile and escape." This time, the aide-de-camp's opinion was completely in agreement with his. "Sir, we've just investigated that Qingda Aerospace Limited. This company has a small reputation in the Federation. A considerable part of their business is transporting labor to the refugee camp. The amount of labor they transport is not small." The officer snorted again. "What a company with no future. Is there any meaning in doing this kind of business to make money?" These words were a little contradictory. He had forgotten how the Empire treated the inferior races. It was basically humanitarian destruction. At the very least, the Federation was humane and gave the inferior races food, so that they could at least keep their lives. The aide-de-camp nodded. Maybe the pirate ship colluded with the management of those planets and wanted to capture these two people. This judgment was obviously wrong, but the officer would not point it out. The officer thought that the pirate ship must have wanted to capture this talented child. This child was obviously fleeing in the direction of the Empire. It was obvious that he did not want to go back and live the life of a laborer. In the end, the pirate ship would rather destroy Swordfish than let the child go to the Empire. Sigh, this child is also fated to be with the Norse Empire. Although this was what he thought, he could not say it out loud. I think they want to take back the transport ship, or there's something particularly valuable on the ship. The aide-de-camp immediately said, "The Secret Service mecha team has just checked. There's nothing special. It's all explosive wreckage and solid garbage. There's not much value." The officer nodded and waved his hand. "Forget it. I can't be bothered with the Federation's nonsense. Carry out the original plan of patrolling the line." The aide-de-camp looked at the underground hibernation chamber. "Then what do we do with these two people? Carry out the standard procedure?" The officer looked at Xinjie, who was sleeping soundly. "Send this person to the hibernation chamber of our fleet. Make sure he's supplied. I'll keep him for future use." He was indeed fond of talents. This was the same whether it was the Norse Empire or the Holy Grail Federation. Everyone valued talents, especially origin ability users, but how to find talents was a technical job. The officer's eyes were quite sharp. "Yes, sir." The medic bowed his head respectfully. The aide-de-camp pointed at Ding Meng in the hibernation chamber. "What about this person?" "This." The officer hesitated for a moment. According to the usual procedure, should they just treat him like trash and let him fend for himself in space? But Ding Meng was obviously not trash. What if he was useful? At the very least, he was an origin ability user and had some strength. This was not suitable to carry out the standard procedure. Moreover, looking at the situation, Ding Meng had obviously escaped with Xinjie. These two children might even be friends. Even if they weren't friends, at least they had gone through life and death together. The officer thought far ahead. If this Xinjie really managed to make a name for himself in the future, then today's matter would be a great karma. If Xinjie were to ask about his other little friend's situation in the future, how should he answer? Lying was definitely not good, so he might as well do him a favor. After pondering for a moment, the officer finally said, "The nearest planet here seems to be planet TT-12, right? Inform the nearest space station to send him to planet TT-12. This. The aide-de-camp also hesitated. "Sir, what we're doing is against the rules." He doesn't have the qualifications to be a citizen of the Norse Empire. If the inspection department checks the event recorder, it'll be difficult for us to explain. The officer glared at him. I know he's not a citizen, but these two people are origin ability users. Looking at the situation, they didn't stay in the Holy Grail Federation and came to the Norse Empire. No matter how you look at it, they're still origin ability users and are still useful. Do you want me to use the standard procedure to deal with origin ability users? The aide-de-camp thought for a moment and finally let out a long sigh. Sir, I've obviously been convinced by you. I also think this is the best way. We don't have the authority to deal with origin ability users. Planet TT-12 is a peripheral planet of the Empire. Although he doesn't have the qualifications to be a citizen, it's more suitable for him to go there. The officer nodded. No matter what, he's still an origin ability user. He'll still be of some use. As for the future, it'll depend on his own luck. Contact the space station of planet TT-12 and get him to a peripheral planet. I'll leave this matter to you. The aide-de-camp immediately saluted. Yes, sir. Chapter 56. Ding Meng, wake up. You lazy bum, it's time for you to get up. Ding Meng, wake up. Eh? This was Little Rascal's voice. Ding Meng opened his eyes, and his vision gradually cleared up. This time, he was no longer in a world of darkness. He could see light and he could see light. Next, he found himself lying on a bed. He was not mistaken, this was indeed a bed. It was made of simple wooden frames, and there was a straw mat on top of it. He was lying on this straw mat, and there was a dry woody smell coming from it. For most people, this smell was undoubtedly unpleasant, but for the laborers who had lived in Black Gold Base for a long time, it was simply a fragrance. Ding Meng even sniffed it carefully. Wow, it was really a straw mat. He could not help but sit up like a carp. Only then did he realize that he was in a simple room. There were no steel plates, no crystal plates, no metal, no hibernation pods. There were no modern technological facilities in this room at all. Of course, there was also none of the dampness, darkness, and unpleasant smells of the mining area. In addition to the bed, there was also a small wooden table in this room. Beside the table were two straw stools, which were the most primitive and ancient straw stools in the legends. The surrounding walls could not even be called walls. They were completely made of round logs. Where is this? Ding Meng was very curious. Little Rascal appeared very happy. This is planet TT-12, near the Norse Empire's TCP-121 nebula. Ding Meng, we've escaped. We're saved. La 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 la. Ding Meng's spirit was also shaken. After such a long period of painful struggle for survival, the heavens had finally taken care of him and allowed him to survive. Most importantly, he had managed to escape from Black Gold Base and survive. This feeling of surviving a disaster was very exciting and joyful. Ding Meng could not help but ask, who saved us? Is it Xinjia? Just when he asked the question, a series of images flashed through his mind. Skywalkers chasing after the Falcon spacecraft, jellyfish searching for the Falcon spacecraft, mecha squads picking up the hibernation pods being sent to the logistics ship of the Empire's fleet, the medics inspecting the hibernation pods, the conversation between the officers and the adjutant, information about what had happened in the outside world while he was in hibernation flooded into his brain almost within a second, allowing him to quickly know the whole story. He curiously asked, "What's going on?" Little Rascal said, "This is my event recorder. It's still working automatically while you're in hibernation. Right now, I'm transferring information into your consciousness space. This is all I can do with my level 1 authority." I see. Ding Meng sighed. It seems that the officers of the Imperial fleet have no ill intentions towards us. It's a pity that we don't know where Xinjia is. Little Rascal snorted. You should worry more about yourself. As soon as she said that, Ding Meng was immediately alerted. There was a slight energy fluctuation outside. Someone was coming. There was a door on the east side of the room, but there was no door. A light yellow curtain made of straw was pulled open, and a man wearing a strange uniform and a pentagon hat walked in. The man sat down on a straw stool and took out a small PDA from his pocket. Looking at the scratches and rust on the surface of the PDA, it was probably used for a long time. The man operated the PDA as he asked, "Name?" Ding Meng was stunned. The man raised his head and glanced at him. "Name? Are you asking me?" Ding Meng finally reacted. The man rolled his eyes. "Of course, if I'm not asking you, then I'm asking the table. Is there someone else in this room?" Although his tone was unfriendly, Ding Meng did not feel any hostility. Instead, he felt a sense of closeness. However, he was already used to being vigilant. Instead of answering, he asked, "Who are you?" The man was so angry that he laughed. "No wonder they say you're a galactic refugee. A country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world. Listen well, my name is Douglas Fred. I'm the citizen officer of this area. You can call me Fred. Seeing that you're not that old, you can also call me Uncle Fred." Ding Meng suddenly laughed. He was used to living in the black gold base. There was too much deception and mistrust between people. He would never call someone uncle or something like that. Now that someone was asking him to call him uncle, Ding Meng felt that it was quite amusing. Fred's appearance was a bit old, and his beard was a bit white. It was clear that he was quite old, so there was nothing wrong with calling him uncle. "What are you laughing at? Am I very funny?" Fred's eyes widened. Fortunately, little rascal was already explaining. "Ding Meng, this is a village on the outskirts of Planet TT-12's Autumn Lake City. You don't have the qualifications to be a citizen of the Empire, so you're considered an outsider." He's currently counting the outsiders in this area. Hearing the explanation, Ding Meng quickly waved his hand at Fred. No, sir. Citizen officer. Kid, at least you're sensible." Fred was obviously very pleased with this title. He continued to type on the computer. "Name?" Ding Meng noticed that the edge of the computer and the pentagon hat had the same logo inlaid on it. He had seen this logo on the underground warship outside the dome before. Two short daggers crossed together by a steel ring. So this was the logo of the Norse Empire. No wonder Julie said that Bamboo Pole was a spy sent by the Empire to the Black Gold base. It seemed that she was right. Ding Meng. Ding as in human, Meng as in masked, Ding Meng answered. Fred said, "Age." Ding Meng said, 20. Fred said, "Where are you from?" Ding Meng said, "The Black Gold base." Fred raised his head and widened his eyes again. "I'm asking you which planet and which city are you from?" Ding Meng sighed. "I only know that the place is called the Black Gold base. I don't know which planet it is exactly." Fred stared at him for a while before sighing as well. "Forget it, I don't blame you. I know that interstellar refugees like you don't know where you came from most of the time. Looking at how skinny you are, you must have suffered a lot. The commanding officer on the space station told me that you were rescued by the patrol fleet during their interstellar patrol, so I won't hold it against you." Ding Meng looked at him, and could not help but feel a sense of closeness. Fred said, "But you're not a citizen of the Empire, so you don't have a lot of rights. And since you're here, you have to abide by the rules here. Now, come with me. I'll tell you about the rules here." Even without his urging, Ding Meng had been looking forward to seeing what kind of world it was outside the house. As soon as the curtain was lifted, a wave of wetness hit his face. Ding Meng felt extremely refreshed. It had been far too long since he had enjoyed such a pure, refreshing feeling. Previously, he had always been in a hot, scorching, and dark environment. But this time, the outside world did not disappoint him. Chapter 57. Misty Rain. This was a real misty rain. It was like a snow-white veil that danced in the air, filling up the entire sky. Beneath the misty rain was an endless field of paddy fields. The paddy fields had yet to fully mature, but some areas were already glowing with a golden color. It seemed that harvest season was coming soon. In addition to the paddy fields, there were also many neat fields and green grasslands nearby. There were cows, sheep, chickens, and birds chasing each other and playing on the field. A clear stream flowed through the middle of the fields, and the sound of the stream was very pleasant. Compared to the desolate, dark, and oppressive black gold base, this place was simply beautiful. It was like a paradise on earth. Even the humid air was accompanied by the fragrance of leaves. Ding Meng could not help but close his eyes. He raised his head and took a deep breath. This was the smell of freedom. Fred had already begun to explain. Planet TT-12 is a peripheral planet of the Empire. Since there is no energy source to be exploited here, but the natural conditions and climate are very good, this place is able to grow all natural green food and raw materials. Ding Meng could not help but sigh in praise. This place is really good. Fred could not help but turn his head and give him a strange look. You are the first person to think that this place is good. Is there a problem? Ding Meng asked. Fred could not be bothered to answer his question. He pointed at a few empty patches of mud. Kid, don't say that Uncle didn't take care of you. From now on, this place is yours. What do you mean? Ding Meng was curious. Fred's expression became even more strange. You can grow vegetables, farm, raise cows, and raise chickens. Ding Meng wondered if he had heard wrong. This brother had finally gotten rid of his status as a laborer, and now he was here to be a vegetable farmer? Fine. If you want me to grow vegetables, then you need to have vegetable seeds. If you want to raise cows, you need to have calves, right? Ding Meng was a practical person, so his question was more practical. Fred rolled his eyes. That's your problem. My job is only to bring you here. Everything else has nothing to do with me. This. Ding Meng was dumbfounded. Fred then pointed in another direction. You are not alone. You still have neighbors. Looking in the direction of his finger, Ding Meng could clearly see that his room was actually a simple wooden house. Next to the wooden house was a 2-story cement bungalow, and in front of the house was a small courtyard. An old man with a head full of white hair walked out of the courtyard. He was probably even older than Fred, but it was obvious from his face that he was a legitimate descendant of the Chinese. Fred was already greeting him. Old man, you, come and take a look at your new neighbor. This kid is called Ding Meng. Old man, you smiled happily. Welcome, welcome, Ding Meng. Come in and have a seat. Old man Yu's house was definitely much better than Ding Meng's wooden house. At the very least, it had the most basic amenities. The moment he entered the house, Old man Yu warmly greeted Ding Meng. He first poured him some water and then brought over a plate of nut. Ding Meng, right? You can call me Old Yu. Come, eat some. I heard from the citizen officer that you survived the interstellar disaster. It must have been very hard on you. You should eat more. In the interstellar era where everyone took nutrient solutions, this kind of peanut-like nut was a very good snack. Ding Meng still had good taste. He knew that this was a famous specialty of the Norse Empire, sour plum pecans. It was very popular among the rich. Ding Meng suddenly felt very uncomfortable. This was because he was used to the cold eyes and suspicion of others. He was used to the insidiousness and hatred of others. Suddenly, a stranger was showing concern for his well-being. This made him very uncomfortable. Old man Yu was an ordinary human. When he was middle-aged, his wife passed away in an accident, leaving behind a daughter to study in Autumn Zay City. He was the only one living alone on this rural farm, relying on this large piece of land to make a living. He was usually very bored by himself. Now that he suddenly had a neighbor, Old man Yu was very happy. When it was close to evening, Old man Yu even took out 3 nutrient solutions and stuffed them into Ding Meng's hands. Ding Meng, I know that you've just arrived here, and the coming days will be very difficult for you. I don't know if you've done farm work before, but it will definitely be hard. Take these 3 nutrient solutions first. Have a good night's sleep. If you need anything, call me at any time tomorrow. Ding Meng held the 3 nutrient solutions and did not know what to say. In the current environment, of course, he could not refuse such a gift. After all, other than a claw knife and a bracelet, he really did not have anything else on him. However, Ding Meng still asked, "Old you, you've planted so many grains, vegetables, chickens, ducks, cattle, and sheep on this land. Why don't you cook for yourself?" Old Yu's old face showed a hint of emotion. In the end, the nutrient solutions are still cheaper. We can sell these green foods at a good price to the buyers. Ding Meng, you're still young. It's better to save up for emergencies in the future. Although his words were short, Ding Meng immediately understood. This was a planet on the edge of the Norse Empire. It was probably focused on farming. These green foods were not for people like Old Yu to eat, but to be sold at a low price to specialized buyers. The buyers would then sell them at a high price to the big cities of the central galaxy for the rich to enjoy. This was the same nature as the workers mining in black gold base. Diamonds stained with blood and tears would eventually become embellishments for those celebrities or beautiful women, not jewelry for the workers. Ding Meng suddenly felt very emotional. He remembered an old proverb, "One who wears silk is not a silkworm breeder." However, this place was still many times better than black gold base. At least he could live freely. For Ding Meng, this was enough. It was only now that Ding Meng finally understood what Fred meant. That was, he could freely plant the few empty plots of land in front of the gate. That was what he could rely on to settle down here. If he wanted to farm, so be it. Ding Meng did not take it too hard. It was impossible for people to live as they pleased. Adapting to the circumstances was something that people should learn. The 3 mixtures that Old Yu gave him were obviously not something that the cheap nutrient solution in black gold base could compare to. First of all, the appearance was very beautiful. Naturally, it had the unique dagger logo of the Empire printed on it. Secondly, there was the name of the manufacturer, Norse Empire Autumn Pool City Anvil Food Production Company, Limited. The label on the surface of the test tube also had a description of the capacity. Energy 500 plus decars. This was easy to understand. A normal person's daily energy requirement was around 120 decars. The nutrient solution in the black gold base had a capacity of 40 decars. Almost 12 vials were equivalent to 1 vial from Old Yu. Since Old Yu had given him 3 vials, it was basically equivalent to giving him 10 days' worth of food. Presumably, Old Yu was taking care of him. Back in his house, Ding Meng felt very emotional. He had escaped from black gold base to the Norse Empire in almost one night. Moreover, he had come to such a peaceful place. Although he had escaped from a dangerous environment, survival was still his primary goal. Survival, no matter which environment you were in, was never a simple matter. Chapter 58. Ding Meng didn't fall asleep that night. He had actually stayed in the hibernation pod for almost 8 days, so his brain wasn't that tired. Plus, Origin ability users didn't need a lot of sleep. After swallowing a nutrient solution, Ding Meng sat cross-legged on his bed and directly entered a meditative state. The origin energy on planet T-112 was obviously not as dense as on the domed planet. Little Rascal's explanation was, the closer you are to Liang, the more origin energy there is. This is because the origin of the universe began from the Big Bang. The origin energy in his body was abundant, so he didn't need to consume too much. However, Ding Meng still couldn't control his curiosity and asked Little Rascal to open up the human figure in his consciousness space. The 4th origin was still in his heart, but it was actually behind his right atrium. After careful observation, Ding Meng felt that the diamond star technique wasn't something that just anyone could cultivate. It could be said that the complexity and quantity of the 4th origin was even greater than the previous 3 combined. At a rough estimate, it was at least 1.5 times more complex than the previous 3. But the 4th origin is the most important step. Little Rascal became very serious when it came to cultivation. Do you still remember Julie? Of course he did. Julie was Ding Meng's first real opponent because Julie was an origin ability user, not a normal person like the leopard machine gun. Ding Meng naturally had a deep impression of that battle, especially when Julie's annihilation of Ice Palm created a bubble of blue energy at the end. It had directly imprisoned him in place, unable to move. Little Rascal very directly explained, the thermal and ice elements compete in brute force. If you had successfully constructed the fourth origin, her three-layered waves wouldn't have been able to freeze you to the point of being unable to move. If you had been able to dodge, her ultimate move would have missed. You wouldn't have had to endure it at all. Think about it, if that had been the case, it wouldn't have been so difficult to deal with her. She was indeed Ding Meng's little friend. She knew what Ding Meng was most interested in. Therefore, when Ding Meng heard her words, he began to calm down and observe. If one could describe it, the internal structure of the fourth origin was like a palace sand table. In this palace, not only did one have to remember its overall shape, every hall, every garden, every step, and even every corner had to be clearly remembered. It was just like an architect. You had to consider every detail, not the first 3 points. You were just an artist. You just had to follow the virtual image and draw the gourd. This time, the progress of his cultivation was indeed very slow. Ding Meng gave up after only building 1/10 of it. There was no other reason than that he was hungry again. Sigh, according to the standards of the Norse Empire, you can be considered an intermediate origin ability user now. Little Rascal sighed helplessly. Consumption is a big problem. Ding Meng expressed his agreement. Origin ability users consumed a lot of energy in the first place, and he himself was the one who consumed the most. After just a short while, he already felt like he couldn't concentrate. Little Rascal said, Ding Meng, I've done some calculations. According to your current cultivation progress, you'll need at least 100 hours of time, at least 30 vials of nutrient solution, and at the same time, complete the construction in one go. Only then will you be considered to have passed. Ding Meng now understood this principle. The reason why he needed to complete the construction in one go was because the human brain's memory wasn't perfect. It was normal for people to forget about the earlier parts after looking at the latter part. If he continued to observe while constructing, the number of times he was interrupted would increase, and the effect wouldn't be as perfect as it was in one go. In the end, he would still need to continuously strengthen the construction in order to consolidate the effect. This was a very time-consuming process. Wasting time was an unwise thing to do, regardless of whether it was an origin ability user or a normal human. Ding Meng said, forget it. Before I have enough supplies and time, I'll just focus on strengthening the first 3 points. At the very least, it's not a bad idea to strengthen my physique. At the very least, I'll be able to cultivate for a short period of time every day. Little Rascal also expressed his agreement. It looks like that's the only thing we can do for now. Ding Meng, let's go get some supplies first. Let's see if there's anyone else nearby so we can steal some. Ding Meng said helplessly, this isn't Black Gold Base. This is the Norse Empire. That citizen official said that I'm a refugee, so I have to follow the rules. Little Rascal, don't even think about killing or robbing. Little Rascal sighed. Then we'll do as the citizen official said. Let's farm and get some money first. Let's go find that old man you for help. It was already noon the next day. Ding Meng crawled out of the wooden hut and immediately scanned the surroundings with his telekinetic vision. He discovered that old Yu wasn't home at all. A light, refreshing drizzle continued to fall from the overcast sky. Ding Meng found old Yu in a golden paddy field upstream of a small stream. Old Yu was currently harvesting wheat with a worn-out sickle. His stooped body was clearly strained. After all, he was a man of his age. Old Yu, why don't you buy a robot to help you harvest? Ding Meng expressed his confusion. He casually fiddled with the wheat. This is wheat used to make rhubarb wine. The straw is too thick, so harvesting it by hand is very slow. Old Yu seemed to be happy when he saw Ding Meng. Ha, little Ding, you've done farm work before? Ding Meng shrugged. I know a bit. I saw this kind of wheat when I was a kid herding cows. It's considered a high-grade crop. Little Rascal expressed his suspicion when he heard this. Herding cows? You're bragging, aren't you? Old Yu sighed. Robots are quite expensive. The cheapest one costs more than 3,000 tokens, and you'll have to go to Autumn Pool City to buy one. Isn't it better to save this money? The currency circulating in the Norse Empire was called tokens. It was a low-content gold coin that was generally used in small places below the city-state level. 100 tokens could be exchanged for one galactic coin. Galactic coins were the mainstream virtual currency. Ding Meng suddenly remembered that he didn't even see a transport cart in Old Yu's yard. It was probably because the old man was used to being thrifty and did everything himself. He looked at the paddy field again. It was estimated to be 2,000 to 3,000 square meters, and less than a fifth of it had been harvested. Ding Meng couldn't help but ask, "You harvested this field this morning?" Old Yu nodded. "I plan to finish harvesting it in 3 days. It's barley season now, so the merchants will be coming here the day after tomorrow." Ding Meng thought that at this rate, it would take more than a week to finish harvesting it. "Forget it, Old Yu. I'll help you harvest it." Old Yu immediately became happy. "That's great. Little Ding, wait here. I'll go find you a knife." "No need. I have a knife." Ding Meng flicked his wrist, and the dark golden T-shaped knife flipped into his palm. Old Yu's eyes widened. "You can harvest wheat with a knife like that?" Ding Meng didn't answer at all, because he had already rushed out like a shuttle car. Old Yu couldn't see his movements clearly at all. All he could see was the countless straw and wheat stalks in the rice field in front of him shooting up into the sky, flying all over the sky at a speed that made one speechless. About 10 minutes later, Ding Meng rushed back. All the stalks in his path fell to the ground, forming a new golden path. "You!" Old Yu's eyes widened. "Little Ding, are you an origin ability user?" "Crap." Ding Meng cursed inwardly. He must have gone too far. However, he still pretended to catch his breath. "No, I used to harvest wheat when I was young. I can run, so I'm fast." "But your knife." Old Yu still couldn't believe it. Ding Meng hurriedly explained, "This is a treasured knife passed down in my family. It's very sharp and can even cut meat." Hearing this, Little Rascal gritted her teeth in anger. "Liar Ding Meng, you really know how to lie. Someone gave it to you, but you said it was a family heirloom. You bastard." Ding Meng couldn't be bothered with her. "Old Yu, what do you think?" Old Yu's mouth fell open. He stood there in a daze, unable to say a word. Ding Meng's work in 10 minutes was equivalent to his 3 hours of work. What could he say? That afternoon, Ding Meng helped Old Yu with his work in the paddy field. The wheat in the fields was quickly harvested. Ding Meng even took the initiative to help Old Yu tie up the wheat and move it to the yard. It wasn't that he was being kind. Rather, he felt that he had to do something to repay the 3 nutrient solutions that Old Yu had given him. However, Old Yu couldn't stop smiling at Ding Meng's efficiency. He even took the initiative to invite Ding Meng to have dinner together. Dinner? Ding Meng began to have doubts again. In the past half a year, he had only eaten a real meal on the swordfish spaceship, steak. "Yes, dinner. Dinner that we made ourselves," Old Yu explained with a smile. "Because little man is coming back tonight." Chapter 59. The dinner was sumptuous. There were fried corn kernels, braised sauerkraut, wild asparagus, 4 plates of bread, a plate of Norse Empire's special yogurt cheese, a plate of sour plums and pecans, and the rarest thing was that Old Yu had even killed a wild turkey and made a large pot of chicken soup with pine mushrooms. For the rich families of the Norse Empire, this was simply the worst picnic in the country, but for Old Yu, this was already a great treat. Of course, for Ding Meng, This was not even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. However, Ding Meng would definitely not stuff himself with food like he did on the swordfish spaceship, because he could see that old Yu's family was not well off financially. On the way back, he had already asked old Yu in detail. For the 500 kilograms of wheat harvested in the afternoon, the buyer's price was about 600 tokens. Ding Meng had never had much of a concept of money, but with a comparison, he knew the depth of the situation. If he wanted to buy a small intelligent harvesting robot, he would need 3,600 tokens, which meant that old Yu would have to work hard to plant 10 mu of land. This kind of harvest would only occur once every 2 months, and the robot would also need to be maintained, so old Yu was reluctant to spend money on it. The nutrient solution was not cheap either. The business center in the nearby Verdant Tarn town sold it for 33 tokens. In other words, an ordinary person could barely survive 2 months of work, so old Yu had to plant other vegetables and meat in addition to the rice fields. Because old Yu's daughter was currently studying at the Leaston Academy in Autumn Tarn City, this was a considerable expense. In Black Gold Base, wealth was calculated in points, so people usually did not have a specific concept. But in the real world of ordinary people, Ding Meng now knew that survival was not easy, especially when one had to honestly sell one's labor. In the evening, when Ding Meng came out of the wooden house, he saw Yu Man was helping her father with the wheat in the yard. She was slightly tall and dressed very simply. She wore green trousers, a checkered shirt, and a pair of very energetic white sneakers. Her round face looked very healthy, and her big eyes were filled with kindness and sincerity. As soon as she saw Ding Meng, she came up to greet her warmly. "Are you Ding Meng? Welcome, welcome. Come in and have a seat. Dad said that thanks for your help in the afternoon." "Hello." Ding Meng was a little embarrassed. He rarely saw the opposite sex, and would not interact with the opposite sex. Moreover, Yu Man was not the ugly type. She was full of youthfulness and confidence. She looked like a friendly girl next door. It was easy for young men to feel restrained. Although Ding Meng was restrained, Little Rascal began to comment casually, "Yo, this girl is not bad, Ding Meng. Look at her hair, it's tied in 2 braids. What do you think? Are you interested in dating her? This type of girl is very interesting." Ding Meng said coldly, "Shut up." Little Rascal was displeased. After dinner was prepared, the 3 of them quickly sat down at the square table in the courtyard. This time, the main character was obviously not Ding Meng. This was because old Yu was constantly asking about Yu Man's well-being and how she was doing in school. When it came to studying, Yu Man was clearly not as confident as before. She held a small bowl and silently picked up food. "Dad, my bright fist has already reached the 3rd level of the realm of integration. Last month, during the test, my meditation time in the induction cabin broke through 20 minutes. Old Yu obviously did not know much about cultivation. He only knew one thing, and that was that Yu Man was working hard in the direction of an origin ability user. However, she had not become a true origin ability user yet. Whether it was in the Norse Empire or the Holy Grail Federation, origin ability users had a very high social status. The reason old Yu was still working as a farmer at such an old age was simply to support Yu Man's studies. He hoped that Yu Man would one day become an origin ability user and have a bright future. "Little man, you have to continue working hard. Last time, you said that you could meditate for 17 minutes and 30 seconds. How come after a few months, your meditation time has only increased by a few minutes?" Old Yu seemed to be speaking with great sincerity. "Dad, meditation is not as simple as you think. Every additional 10 seconds requires a lot of effort." Yu Man was clearly not convinced. She muttered in a low voice, "Our family can't compare to those rich classmates. They can buy amplifiers, but I don't have the money to buy them. That's why my progress is a bit slower," old Yu sighed. "Sigh, that's true. But you're 22 years old this year, and you haven't become an origin ability user yet." Let's see if we can sell this new batch of Spinefoot bison for a good price, and buy some amplifiers. You don't have much time left. This was clearly the true epitome of a normal family. Once they started talking about practical matters at the table, the father and daughter both lowered their heads and silently picked at the food. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit dull, Ding Meng hurriedly opened his mouth. That. Sister Yu, does your school specialize in teaching people how to cultivate martial arts? It was no wonder that Ding Meng didn't know. The Norse Empire revered martial arts. Most normal schools focused on cultivating martial arts and sensing origin ability. After all, everyone yearned to become an origin ability user. Only a small number of schools taught other specialized knowledge. Aristocratic schools were where the true experts gathered. There were basically no ordinary people there. Ha, little brother Ding Meng, you can just call me Ah Man. Yu Man saw that it was him who asked the question and immediately became very happy. I heard from Dad that you were able to harvest wheat very quickly this afternoon. Your physical condition is pretty good. Do you also want to become an origin ability user? Old Yu also nodded in agreement. Yes, little Ding's body is good, he can work, and he's still young. He can go and learn. Who knows, maybe he can really become an origin ability user in the future. Little Rascal immediately snorted. This silly girl, our family's Ding Meng has been an origin ability user for a long time. You're just a rookie who hasn't even started. He can beat dozens of you by himself. Little Rascal, be quiet. Ding Meng quickly stopped her. He turned to Yu Man and humbly asked, Sister Man, can you learn real martial arts in your school? Of course. Yu Man immediately became proud. Our Leaston Academy is the best university in Autumn Zay City. There are many subjects there, such as combat, martial arts, physical fitness, firearms, cold weapons, manufacturing, refining, alchemy, data, battle armors. She listed more than 10 disciplines in one breath. Ding Meng's interest was immediately piqued. Martial arts had always been his weakness. If he had the opportunity to learn an excellent martial arts, it would undoubtedly be of great help to him in the future. Then, how can I go to your school to learn these? Ding Meng asked. Yu Man finally hesitated because she saw her father giving her a look. She immediately realized that she had forgotten that Ding Meng was a galactic refugee. She did not have the qualifications to be a citizen of the Empire and was destined to not be an official student of the Academy. Little brother Ding Meng, what kind of martial arts do you want to learn? Yu Man began to change the topic. Ding Meng thought for a moment and said, I want to learn everything because I know too little. This was the truth. After living as a refugee for so long, the only thing he knew was how to survive. Even when he escaped to the Swordfish spaceship, he didn't even know how to dodge the particle laser cannons. Xian Jie's amazing performance on the spaceship had left a deep impression on him. There was no harm in learning more. Who knows, maybe one day it would come in handy at a critical moment. Little Rascal could help him a lot of times, but that was all in theory. No matter how good his theory was, it couldn't compare to his own actual combat skills. Yu Man really didn't know how to respond to Ding Meng's words. Chapter 60. In the silent night, the drizzle finally stopped. Ding Meng returned to her small wooden hut. There was definitely no light in the house, but he had long been accustomed to the darkness. Ever since he gained telekinesis vision, it didn't matter whether it was dark or not. Just as he was contemplating whether to carry out a new round of strengthening training, he had already sensed someone approaching from outside. It was Yu Man. She was knocking on the wooden door lightly. Ding Meng, little brother Ding Meng, are you resting? Ding Meng quickly stood up. I'm here. What's the matter, Sister Man? Yu Man held a flashlight in her left hand and handed 5 nutrient solutions to him with her right hand. What are you doing? Ding Meng was confused. Yu Man pressed the nutrient solutions on his palm. Dad asked me to give them to you. He wants to thank you for helping him harvest so much wheat this afternoon. He's not in good health, so you finished the work that would have taken him a few days to finish in one afternoon. Ding Meng held the nutrient solution in her hands and didn't know what to say. These 5 vials were worth nearly 200 tokens. It was almost the result of old Yu's 10 days of labor. How could he be so generous as to give it away? Seeing his hesitant expression, Yu Man felt guilty. Ding Meng, just take them. The hut you live in doesn't even have a door. This used to be the place where we tied up the cows. Uncle Fred asked my dad to renovate it before letting you live here. What's wrong with that? I think this hut is great. Ding Meng was very confused. Compared to the basement in black gold base, even if this hut was renovated from a cow pen, it couldn't be better. Yu Man was speechless. This was the first time she met someone like Ding Meng. He actually thought that a cow pen was a good place to live. Oh right, Ding Meng, didn't you want to study at our school? Yu Man brought up this topic again. Ding Meng was indeed interested. Yes, Sister Man, do you have any connections? He also knew that it would be difficult for him to enter the Empire's schools with his identity, but as long as he could learn new knowledge and improve his strength, he was willing to give it a try no matter how difficult it was. Yu Man said, many of the teachers in our school can sit in on their lectures. Even if you're not a student of our school, you can still attend the lectures. When the time comes, I'll take you there. If others ask, just say that you're my cousin from my hometown. Little Rascal immediately said, Ding Meng, you have to go. Although our diamond star technique is powerful, you have to understand the other techniques in depth. Only by knowing your enemy and yourself can you win every battle. Ding Meng nodded, but he was still worried. Is it that simple? Do you need me to prepare anything? Hesitation flashed across Yu Man's eyes. Ding Meng, why don't you stay here for a while? Once you have some savings, I'll take you there. The city is different from our village. No matter what you do, you need money. Understood. Ding Meng nodded solemnly. Thank you so much, Sister Man. He was truly grateful. In his world, apart from Little Four, almost no one was willing to help him. Or rather, even if they did help him, it was mostly in the nature of a transaction. Very few people would help him without asking for anything in return. This was a very warm feeling. He was even a little glad that the Empire's fleet officers had thrown him into this place. In the end, this normal society was much better than the dark base because it was full of human kindness. With the 5 new nutrient fluids, Ding Meng's cultivation progress for the night was undoubtedly much smoother. The construction of the 4th origin was completed by about 1/5. Now that he was circulating the origin energy in his body again, he only needed to think about it and the energy would quickly and accurately converge on that part of his body. According to Little Rascal's guidance, Ding Meng was constantly strengthening the mirror in his body while he was constructing the origin. The battle with Julie had made him understand that this was actually his most powerful defense at the moment. The first time he successfully condensed the origin energy, it took him 32 minutes and 46 seconds to spread it throughout his body. After 2 days of repeated cultivation, it only took him 1 minute and 2 seconds to successfully condense the origin energy. Although the time had been greatly reduced, there was also a problem. If he wanted to break through this time limit, he would have to endure an even more painful process of condensing the origin energy. Right now, even increasing the time by a single second was quite difficult. The suffocating feeling in his chest made him feel like he could faint at any moment. Although Ding Meng cultivated through the night, more than 30 hours had passed by the time he opened his eyes. It was now the morning of the 3rd day. The long-awaited sunlight appeared in the sky today. It was different from the artificial sunlight in the dome of the black gold base. This kind of sunlight didn't make people feel hot or stuffy. It was like an autumn afternoon, especially pleasant. The sunlight felt lazy and comfortable when it shone on the body. Using his telekinesis, he first scanned the area. There was actually a huge trailer parked in front of old Yu's house. The trailer looked like a rectangular metal box, but its bottom was a crystal power system. The crystal flames that sprayed out made the trailer float on the road. It seemed like the merchant who bought the wheat had personally come to visit. There was only one person who came. It was a middle-aged man with a full beard. He wore a green vest with the words "Chingza Food" printed on it. He was helping Old Yu move the wheat in the yard onto the trailer. When he saw Ding Meng appear, Old Yu smiled. "Little Ding, you're here." Ding Meng scanned the area again. "Where's Sister Man? Why don't I see her?" Old Yu was struggling to carry a bundle of wheat. "She went back to school yesterday." Ding Meng hurried forward. "Old Yu, I'll help you." The middle-aged man next to him opened his mouth and said, "Hey, I've never seen you before. Are you new here?" Old Yu smiled happily. "This is Little Ding, my new neighbor. He just arrived here a few days ago." The middle-aged man also looked very friendly. "Hee, my name is Ah Du, you can call me Fatty Du." "Hello, Brother Du." Ding Meng also smiled shyly. After a few days, he gradually got used to dealing with the villagers in the countryside. Not to mention other things, the people here were very simple. At least they didn't let him smell danger. Adu was an employee of the town's Chingza Food Purchase Company, Limited. He specialized in buying all kinds of agricultural products from the villages in the suburbs. Old Yu was his most stable supplier. According to Old Yu's introduction, Adu had been doing this in Chingza town for almost 10 years. With the help of Ding Meng, a strong labor force, the wheat stacks quickly filled up the carriage. Adu had already turned on the miniature civilian wrist device and was calculating for Old Yu. The barley for the rhubarb wine, including the straw, is 1,103 pounds. According to the purchase price given by the company today, the total is 992 tokens. But Old Yu, since you're an old friend, let's make it 1,000 tokens. The number is auspicious. What do you think of 10 star coins? It's also convenient to pay with the wrist device. Old Yu was pleasantly surprised. Why did the purchase price increase so much this time? Adu's expression was a little upset. Recently, a new company came to town. They're also buying raw materials everywhere. It's said that they belong to some Houhan group. Our boss urges me to work every day. We have to be faster than them, so the price went up. Houhan group. Old Yu frowned. Apparently, he didn't know what kind of group it was. Adu said, "They even opened a martial arts school in town. They're recruiting people everywhere. They say they're recruiting talents. What kind of talents can there be in a small town on a peripheral planet? Really?" When he complained, Ding Meng became interested. "Wait, Brother Ah, the martial arts school is recruiting people? What kind of people are they recruiting?" Adu looked at Ding Meng's thin and short stature. "Hee, little brother, do you want to go to the martial arts school? With your body, the martial arts school might not necessarily want you." Ding Meng didn't care about his playful gaze. He said indifferently, "I have to try before I know." He really had to try. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to continue living in poverty. The huge consumption seriously affected the progress of his cultivation. The top priority was to find something to do. Once he had money, he could buy supplies. He couldn't expect Old Yu to send him nutrient fluids every day, right? Chapter 61. Verdant Tarn Town was a border town located in the southeasternmost part of Autumn Tarn City's jurisdiction. In the Empire's territory, there were millions of such towns, and each town had a resident population of at least 50,000 people. The Empire had always held martial strength in high esteem. Origin ability users with extraordinary abilities had a very high social status, and origin ability warriors were even more outstanding. Almost all of the Empire's citizens regarded becoming an origin ability user as their greatest glory. Even for ordinary citizens, practicing martial arts was almost a lifelong habit. This way they could better train their body and strengthen their physique, so as to be able to perceive origin ability earlier. Therefore, no matter if it was a city or a village, no matter if it was a street or a small alley, martial arts halls, cultivation halls, martial arts halls, and martial arts squares could be seen everywhere. There were all kinds of people cultivating in these places, from high officials and dignitaries to lowly peddlers. Because it was a border planet, Verdant Tarn Town's level of technology wasn't high. On the contrary, it was somewhat backward. Therefore, when Adu stopped the trailer at the crossroads, Ding Meng easily saw the words, Vast Verdant Tarn Martial Arts Hall. It was a sign projected by an intelligent crystal advertising device. It worked on the same principle as the ion transmission system on spaceships in space, which could produce a remote three-dimensional projection at any time. The words, Vast Verdant Tarn Martial Arts Hall, were not only very eye-catching, but the image under the sign was constantly changing. Not only did it accurately display the three-dimensional model, structure, area, function, and location of the martial arts hall, but it also refreshed with rows of subtitles. The content included consumer prices, service items, types of recruitment, selection criteria. It was very clear and detailed. In short, no matter what you wanted to do at the Verdant Tarn Martial Arts Hall, you would be clearly arranged here. But looking at the restaurants, shopping malls, and business centers next to the dojo, they all used ordinary electronic signboards. Just from this point alone, it could be seen that this newly opened dojo was quite powerful in Verdant Tarn Town, no matter how one looked at it. There was already a long queue outside the entrance of the martial arts hall. It seemed that this place was very popular with the residents. Wow, so many people! It was obviously the first time Little Rascal had seen such a scene. Ding Meng, we can cultivate in this martial arts hall. The environment must be good. Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. You need money. Do you think you can use it for free? He had already seen it on the signboard. It provided all kinds of equipment and tools. There were even nutrition cabins, induction cabins, and medical cabins, but the price, even the simplest dumbbell and tab, cost 5 tokens for an hour of use. He did not know if it was expensive for others, but for Ding Meng, it was daunting because he did not even have a single feather in his pocket. Hopefully, I'll be successful this time. Ding Meng prayed to himself. The long line lasted for 20 minutes before it was his turn. The uniformed staff at the entrance was very polite. Excuse me, sir, are you a member of our club? Hello, I'm here to apply for the recruitment, Ding Meng replied in a low voice. The staff smiled at him. Hello, please come with me. The martial arts hall was divided into 3 floors. It covered a large area of about 2,000 square meters. The hall on the first floor was the basic training hall. It had all kinds of equipment, such as barbells, dumbbells, pullers, bends, bicycles, treadmills, rowing machines. The most basic equipment was very complete. Every piece of equipment was neatly arranged and used by people. The middle section was the strength training room, which was also a large hall. However, the number of people here was obviously not as many as the basic training hall. Here, there were many burly men doing various body movements. From the looks of their muscles, these people should have been training for some time. There was a side hall near the stairs of the strength training hall. There were rows of black targets on the wall. Dozens of men and women wearing boxing gloves of various colors were seriously hitting the target. The hall was filled with the sounds of ha 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 ha. Ding Meng noticed that every time the boxers punched, the electronic scoreboard above the target would show the score of the strength of the punch. Interesting. Ding Meng was very interested. Yeah, it's not bad. Little Rascal was also very satisfied with this new environment. Of course, her focus was on the data. According to her calculations, these people's scores were mostly in the range of 30 to 60. After all, the people who came to the martial arts hall were normal people. This range was the standard for normal people. Moreover, these people were considered to be stronger than normal people. Finally, the staff brought Ding Meng to a small room in the side hall. Sir, please come in. Manager who is here? The translucent glass door opened automatically. Ding Meng took a deep breath and walked in with his chest puffed out. In the end, He was here to apply for the recruitment. It was better to keep his spirits up. He thought he looked good, but the people in the room didn't see him that way. Hu Qi was the human resources manager of the martial arts hall. He was 40 years old this year, the most attractive age in a man's life. This was indeed the case. He was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. His tie flowed elegantly. His handsome and mature face paired with gold-rimmed glasses gave off the impression of a refined, professional elite. In his eyes, the people who came to apply for the recruitment today were roughly divided into two groups. One group was tall, powerful, and burly. These people were mostly physical trainers, martial arts instructors, and strength trainers. The other group was dressed neatly and had an extraordinary appearance. These people were obviously office workers. However, the person who came in now was already outside of these two groups. He didn't know where the tattered clothes he was wearing came from. There were 2 holes in the knees of his pants. His hair was messy as if it hadn't been washed for many days. He looked extremely sloppy from head to toe. Most importantly, he was clearly a child. He wasn't tall, powerful, or elegant. Who was he? What was he doing here? You. Hu Qi was stunned for a moment in his office chair. Ding Meng was very direct. Hello, Manager Hu. My name is Ding Meng. I'm here to apply for the recruitment of a sparring partner. It took Hu Qi a long time to come back to his senses. Ding. Ding. Little brother, are you in the wrong place? Ding Meng was puzzled. I'm not in the wrong place. This is the vast Qingze Martial Arts Hall. I'm here to apply for the recruitment. Hu Qi intuitively believed that this was a kid from some town who was used to being wild and came to the martial arts hall for fun. It was reasonable to say that at this time, he should inform the security to take the kid away and then hand him over to the public security office across the street so that the kid's parents could take him back. However, his good professionalism prevented him from doing so. This was because he saw that Ding Meng did not wear the miniature wrist device that symbolized citizenship on his wrist. Thus, he thought of a clever way to drive people away. Ding Meng, right? Did you leave your wrist device at home? This was a hint to the other party in disguise. Ding Meng was also a bit helpless. Manager Hu, your martial arts hall did not say that you would not recruit people without citizenship. My home is at Yuanshan Farm in Qingxi Village 5. You can check it out. Hu Qi immediately turned on the miniature optical computer on the office table. The holographic screen quickly rose. Not only did it show Ding Meng's information, but at the end of the message, there was also a message from Qingze Town's civil protector, Douglas Fred. Foreigner, no bad record. It was obvious that Ding Meng had left a good impression on Fred. There was even an additional note attached. It was obvious that he sympathized with Ding Meng because he was an interstellar refugee. This could also be considered as a way to take care of him in disguise. Of course, if Fred knew who had died at Ding Meng's hands, he would probably vomit blood. There was indeed no bad record, but his record of killing people was solid. Moreover, the people he had killed were all fierce people. Hu Qi had a headache again. After thinking for a while, he waved at the staff at the door. Xiao Wei, take this Mr. Ting to the strength testing machine outside to test his strength. According to the procedures, our martial arts hall's sparring partners also need to meet the strength requirement. Yes, Manager Hu. Xiao Wei understood tacitly. He knew that Hu Qi was trying to drive people away in disguise, so he politely bowed to Ding Meng and gestured. Mr. Ting, this way please. Chapter 62. Sparring partner, from its literal meaning, was to train with you. A sparring partner of a dojo was obviously not there to spar with customers, but to take a beating. What kind of strength did a sparring partner need to test? The real test should be one's resistance. But since he was already here, he had no choice but to comply. And so, Ding Meng followed Little Wei to the row of black targets. There was no one at the edge of the target. Before raising his fist, Ding Meng couldn't help but turn around and ask, What's the minimum score for a sparring partner? This. Little Wei was stumped by this question. The sparring partners who had come to the dojo in the past had never tested their strength, so where would they get the minimum score? But Little Wei was smart enough to immediately answer, 100 points. 100 points was 100 pounds, which was about 200 pounds of force. How could a normal human reach this standard? A single punch could cause someone to spit out blood or break bones. That was the standard of the Leopard machine gun back in black gold base. There was a reason why Xiao Wei had set the standard so randomly. Almost none of the customers who came here could give a score of 100. Those who could score above 80 were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. There was no way Ding Meng could reach that standard. Little Rascal suddenly popped up. Ding Meng, you're an origin ability user. Don't use too much force. Just do a little. If you break the machine, we won't be able to pay for it. We don't have any money right now. Oh, that's right. Ding Meng suddenly came to his senses. He had almost thrown a punch. Fortunately, Little Rascal had reminded him in time. But he couldn't be too casual about it. It would be terrible if he couldn't hit 100 points. At the end of the day, he still hadn't seen the actual statistics of strength, so he couldn't make up his mind. But that wasn't the case in Little Wei's eyes. His opponent was clearly scared. Mr. Ting, please throw a punch, Little Wei urged. Ding Meng replied, okay. As soon as the word left his mouth, Xiao Wei's vision blurred. He couldn't even see how his opponent had punched him. The only thing he could see was the red score on the white scoreboard. Ding, 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 ding. It was climbing up rapidly. Before he could regain his senses, there was a long beep, and the number on the scoreboard was fixed. 446 points. Yeah, it's all right. Ding Meng heaved a sigh of relief. This boxing target was quite sturdy. It seemed that it had not been damaged. 446 points was not bad. It was at least 3 times higher than the standard. You can't think that I'm unqualified, right? No, what's wrong with you guys? Ding Meng suddenly realized that his surroundings were quiet. The entire boxing testing hall was silent. Dozens of men and women were looking at him, as if he was a monster. Xiao Wei's mouth was wide open. What's going on? Ding Meng was puzzled. A burly man next to him stared at him blankly. Little brother, that punch of yours. I guess you broke the record of the dojo. I've never seen anyone who could score 400 points with a single punch. Ding Meng was curious. What's the highest score you can get here? The man said, the highest score I've seen is 108 points, and that was from a professional boxer. **T. Ding Meng thought to himself. He must have gone overboard again. Little brother. Oh no, big brother. The man had already changed the way he addressed Ding Meng. Can you teach me how to practice boxing? At this moment, Hu Qi finally rushed out of the office and waved at the stunned crowd. I'm sorry. There's something wrong with the scoreboard. The score isn't accurate. Please continue. It's fine. Everyone, continue practicing. Phew. Ding Meng sighed in relief. So, there was something wrong with the scoreboard. No wonder there was such a strange score. Do you need me to retest it? Ding Meng asked. Of course. Let's do it again. Hu Qi obviously did not believe the super high score of 400 points, so he pulled Ding Meng to another boxing target. Mr. Ting, no, Brother Ding, let's retest it. What do you think? All right. Ding Meng thought to himself that the target seemed to be wrapped in soft leather and had a strong cushioning ability. If there was something wrong with the scoreboard, then his punch might have been a bit too strong. He should be gentler this time. Oh well, I won't use my fists. I'll just do as Little Rascal said. It shouldn't be a big problem. His idea was simple, but the 40 to 50 pairs of eyes in the audience saw a different story. Ding Meng had his back to the wall, and his right hand formed a familiar knife hand shape. Without even looking at the target, he swung the knife backward. With a muffled sound, the target was accurately hit, and the red score began to rise again with a ding 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 sound. After a few seconds, the number on the scoreboard stopped. With a thud, Hu Qi's gold-rimmed glasses fell to the ground. Xiao Wei's mouth was opened so wide that it could fit an egg. Muscle also rubbed his eyes. He was sure that he did not see wrongly. The score on the scoreboard was 393 points. This score meant that Ding Meng could casually strike anything, even if it was Meng Nan himself. He would be sent flying by this casual strike. Oh my God! Meng Nan was instantly excited. He grabbed Ding Meng's hand and said, "Big brother, can you teach me how to fight? I'm willing to pay for the extra service fee and tuition. I'll pay for it no matter how expensive it is." His excitement caused the crowd to surround him. They all fought to be the first to shout, "Big brother, teach me. I'm a black iron member of the dojo. Big brother, teach me." "Don't teach him. He's only black iron. I'm bronze. I'll pay the tip." "What's AF * king tip? I'll sign a contract and pay double the service fee. Teach me, hurry up and teach me." "Tisk tsk, big brother, that kick just now was amazing. 393 points. I'll never reach that level in my lifetime." "One kick?" He used his palm. "For eyes, are you stupid?" "Oh, sorry. My eyes are playing tricks on me. I didn't see clearly. All right. Everyone, stop arguing. Stop arguing." Hu Qi and Xiao Wei had already returned to normal. They were trying their best to maintain order. "Haha, everyone, don't panic. This is our dojo's sparring partner, Mr. Ting, Ding Meng. If you need anything, you can apply for a sparring partner service." Hearing Hu Qi shout, Ding Meng was a little happy. "That, Manager Hu, I applied for a sparring partner. Do I meet the requirements?" Hu Qi pushed the gold-rimmed glasses on his nose bridge decisively. His face was full of righteousness. "Mr. Ting, oh no, Brother Ding, congratulations on passing the test. I'll create a file for you now. You're officially a member of our dojo. Welcome to Great Waves Group." Ding Meng stared at him suspiciously. "Didn't the advertisement say that there's a 3-month trial period?" "Oh no. Hu Qi shook his head like a rattledrum. Then, he started to talk nonsense with a straight face. "Brother Ding, you're different." "How can I be different?" Ding Meng was curious. Hu Qi's face was serious. "Our Great Waves Group is a large corporation. We take extra care of interstellar refugees. We know that you don't have citizenship, so we've specifically cancelled the trial period. This is our humanistic care and the excellent corporate culture that we've always passed down." What kind of outstanding corporate culture was this? A ferocious person who could casually score 393 points with a single palm strike. Who knew how strong his strength was? If Hu Qi didn't even have this bit of foresight, then he shouldn't be the HR manager anymore. He should go beg on the streets outside. If a talent like Ding Meng was poached by other dojos, the boss would probably hire a hitman to kill him. "Thank you so much, Manager Hu. Our dojo is really good." Ding Meng thanked him from the bottom of his heart. "Brother Ding, you don't have to call me Manager Hu. Just call me Xiao Hu." "Yes, Xiao Hu. Okay." Ding Meng was a little unaccustomed to this guy's attitude. "That, Manager Hu, when can I start working at the dojo?" Hu Qi immediately raised his index finger and said seriously, "Brother, you can start working now." Chapter 63. The second floor of the dojo was the sparring area. It was made up of a number of multi-purpose halls, and most of them were formal arenas. Customers could come in groups of 2 or 3 to spar, while those who came alone could also choose a sparring partner to spar with. The customers who came to the second floor to train were definitely not the same level as those on the first floor. Most of them had a certain foundation in martial arts, or were about to perceive origin ability. They could be considered as the more powerful people among ordinary humans. Of course, there were also origin ability users who came here sometimes. No matter what level a person was at, Martial arts was a necessary training course. This was because martial arts required one to rely on one's own hard work to practice. Ding Meng had already been brought to the staff area by Xiao Wei to take a bath. He had changed into a set of white, soft training clothes, and he looked much more spirited. His dirty face had been cleaned up, and he could still be considered handsome. However, he was still short and he looked like a child. In this era of technology and origin energy coexisting, coupled with the fact that everyone practiced martial arts, the average lifespan of a citizen of the Empire was over 130 years old. The lifespan of an origin ability user was even longer, and there were plenty of people who had reached the peak of their cultivation who were over 800 years old. With Ding Meng's current appearance, those who didn't know him would never think of him as an origin ability user. After all, he was just too young. Sparring partners in the dojo had a lot of flexibility. Normally, sparring sessions would last for 2 hours, and the appearance fee would be 100 tokens. That was the most basic salary. Then, the fee would be determined based on who the sparring partner was. If the customer was strong, the sparring partner's income would rise accordingly. If the customer was satisfied with the sparring partner, they could even get a tip if they were lucky. This was why Ding Meng had chosen the dojo. In truth, this wasn't his choice, but Little Rascal's idea. Not only did Ding Meng have no concept of money, he also didn't know anything about income, planning, or operations. He only knew one thing, and that was that no matter how bad Little Rascal's ideas were, he wouldn't scam him when it mattered. Right now, he didn't have any money. When he didn't have any money, that was when it mattered. On the south side of the second floor's sparring area was a metal hall built purely out of alloy plates. It was specially designed for people of a higher level to practice. The hall was almost empty, with only a few sports equipment scattered in the corner. A girl with a perfect figure was concentrating on lifting a barbell. Xiao Wei knocked on the door. "Miss Chu, your sparring partner is here." Miss Chu put down the barbell and immediately saw Ding Meng when she turned around. She couldn't help but frown. "Is this the new sparring partner you found?" There was obvious distrust in her voice, but Xiao Wei could only smile and explain, "Miss Chu, he's a new sparring partner in our dojo. He's pretty good, and I believe you'll be satisfied with him this time." Miss Chu stared at Ding Meng, but she waved at Xiao Wei. "You can go out. He stays. Remember to close the door." "Thank you." The door was an electronic metal door. It was quite heavy. Once it was closed, it made people feel like they had entered a closed metal cage. Ding Meng also stared closely at the girl in front of him. As soon as he entered, he felt the fluctuation of origin energy. He activated his telekinesis vision and saw clearly that the girl's entire body seemed to be surrounded by a layer of faintly discernible light. He immediately raised his vigilance and focus. Little Rascal finally turned serious. "Ding Meng, this woman is very likely an origin ability user who cultivates body tempering." Body tempering was different from heat and ice. Body tempering focused on tempering one's physical body, and its resistance was very high. Even a beginner origin ability user would be equipped with armor that was impervious to fire and water. However, Little Rascal's next words distracted Ding Meng. "Tisk tsk tsk. This woman's figure is really domineering. Ding Meng, this is the first time I've seen a woman with such a great figure. She's even better than that Julie." Little Rascal didn't make a fuss this time. Miss Chu wasn't very tall, and she wore a black short-sleeved t-shirt that exposed her navel. The hem of the shirt was tied in a knot, making her slender waist and perky bosom stand out. The t-shirt looked light and elastic, and the outline of her bra was clearly visible. Below, she wore tight white spandex pants that tightened her well-proportioned thighs and round buttock. Not only was she beautiful and fashionable, she was also full of seductive charm. Most importantly, Miss Chu's face was also very delicate. Her forehead was tied up with a blue headband, and her curves were astonishing. She was youthful, fashionable, and beautiful. In short, when men saw her, they couldn't help but associate her in some unspeakable direction. At this time, Miss Chu had already walked over to Ding Meng. A fragrance mixed with her body odor and sweat wafted over. Ding Meng couldn't help but feel a little restless. However, he couldn't be blamed for not having enough willpower. For a healthy man with vigorous hormones who hadn't seen many creatures of the opposite sex in 20 years, this was an instinctive reaction. As expected of Little Rascal, he immediately started a new round of comment. Ding Meng, did you see her but just now? It's like a big pumpkin. It must feel good to the touch. Are you interested in touching it? Shut up, Little Rascal. Ding Meng took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the inexplicable restlessness in his heart. Miss Chu looked at Ding Meng. Hello, I hope you won't disappoint me. My time is very precious. Ding Meng was very calm. Hello, Miss Chu. Manager who has already told me. Miss Chu said, very well. Let's start now. Ding Meng saluted with his fists. Miss Chu, please. Earlier, Xiao Wei had repeatedly told him about the various rules of the dojo. A sparring partner had to look like a sparring partner. The sparring partner couldn't possibly make the first move. Miss Chu didn't say anything else. She threw a straight punch at Ding Meng's chest. She didn't underestimate him. There had to be a reason why the dojo dared to send such a short person. However, it was also because he was about the same age as her that she held back a little in her punch. However, Ding Meng casually moved to the side, and the punch missed. Miss Chu retracted her fist and nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. As soon as she finished speaking, she decisively stepped forward. This time, it was a straight punch aimed at Ding Meng's face. Both her speed and strength were much greater than before. Ding Meng still moved to the side, staggered, and retreated according to the rhythm of her attack. Unexpectedly, the punch missed. She quickly moved to Ding Meng's right side and counterattacked with her left elbow. This change wasn't fast, but it was too consistent. Ding Meng had to take it this time. With a "pa" sound, his palm caught the fist steadily. Young Mistress Chu made use of this momentum and used her elbow to lean against her body. She spun around and swept her right leg over. Ding Meng was no stranger to this kind of leg sweep. He had experienced it with bamboo pole before. However, he was wrong this time. Although his left palm blocked the kick, the opponent's spinning momentum didn't stop. Her left leg followed. Not only was the speed fast, it was almost seamless. This was something that bamboo pole couldn't do. Ding Meng could only retreat again. Unexpectedly, after Miss Chu landed on the ground, she leaned forward, bent down, and stretched out her body like a swallow ready to strike. She threw a straight punch at the opponent's thigh. Her right leg lifted and hooked Ding Meng's chin. With two muffled sounds, Ding Meng's left leg and chin were hit at the same time. He staggered back a few steps. What kind of martial arts technique is this? Ding Meng was curious. Little Rascal said, I don't know either. However, I'm already recording it. I can replay it in the space of consciousness later. Miss Chu's consecutive attacks were successful. She stood still with a smug look on her face. Are you okay? Ding Meng touched his chin. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. Let's continue. Miss Chu's eyes revealed a hint of joy. Okay. After she finished speaking, she rushed forward again. This time, the whole room was filled with continuous sounds of palm and fist strikes. The two figures intertwined. Most of the time, she took the initiative to attack while Ding Meng kept retreating to defend himself. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.